Game of Thrones from Elden Ring to the Young Wolf Lord. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26 Important Battle. Robb didn't have time to care about what happened in the royal city. He still had an important battle to fight. Just like the Battle of the Whispering Wood, the enemy's army was still larger than his own, and they had built complete fortifications. It was no longer possible to replicate the miracle of the cavalry charging to end the battle. It was time to fight head on and command the team to fight. Robb calculated his current state in his mind. Although he was very strong, there was no fruit orange in this world to help him quickly restore his mana during the battle. He could only wait for the passage of time to slowly recover. Otherwise, Robb would keep spitting dragon breath, and any army would be nothing more than a toy in front of him. The idea of enchanting the army on a large scale was not very good, because the enchantment did not last long, usually only a few minutes. It was common for a large-scale battle to last a day, and it was impossible for him to release enchantments and prayers everywhere to find friendly forces in the middle of the battle. That would be too cost-effective. Robb still thought it would be better to follow the path of the King of Chew. It still depends on personal bravery. As long as you perform inhumanly and completely destroy the enemy's morale in the fastest time, you can win. Back then, the King of Chew could fight against an army of hundreds of thousands with only tens of thousands of people. He could do it too. My lord, Lord Jason has arrived. Sir Blackfish came to Robb's tent. An elderly noble was with him. It was Lord Jason Lannister who came to support from Seagate. Lord Jason was a tall and thin man with a clean-shaven beard. His brown hair was mixed with white, and his blue-grey eyes revealed a fierce look. Perhaps because of the forced march, his face was haggard and well-defined. He was wearing indigo armor with silver inlays, and his helmet was decorated with eagle wings. He greeted Robb politely. "Lord Robb Stark, you can fight such a beautiful battle at such a young age, which really makes us old guys in the Riverlands ashamed." Robb stood up to greet him. This old weasel was much more trustworthy than the old weasel in Luan River City. "Lord Earl, you are too kind. Those are just empty names. The past is like floating clouds in the sky. Don't worry about it." Jason Lannister looked at Robb with approval. It was rare for him to remain humble at such a young age, after doing such a great thing as capturing the Kingslayer alive. "When I came here, there were many wandering knights and teams defeated by Sir Jaime who wanted to surrender on the road. I spent some time to absorb them into the team. Now there are more than 2,500 people." Robb felt that these people were enough. He came to the map and began to observe the situation of Riverrun. Because it was located at the confluence of two rivers and surrounded by rivers, Jaime could only divide his troops into three parts and station them to the west, east and north of Riverrun. This was Robb's opportunity. "In fact, we are in an advantageous position now." Sir Blackfish analyzed the map. "Jaime was captured alive by you. They are now leaderless and their morale must be in chaos. The combined number of us and the defenders of Riverrun is greater than any of the three armies." Jason Lannister did not speak. He wanted to hear Robb's tactical arrangements. Robb thought for a moment and decided to use the simplest strategy in the art of war: sneak attack plus feint attack. "When it gets dark, we will launch a general attack. Lord Jason, you can transfer all the cavalry in the team to me. How many people are there?" 1 or 200 people. The combat effectiveness is not bad." Robb nodded. "Very good. I will lead 400 riders to attack the enemy on the north bank at night. Once you see the fire, immediately lead all your troops to attack the team on the west bank." Sir Blackfish did not doubt Robb. Before, Robb led their team of less than 300 people to break through Jaime's 3,000 cavalry. There would be no problem in attacking the camp at night this time. Then how should the garrison of Riverrun be arranged? Robb had already thought about it. "Once I start the night attack on the north bank, the troops from the east and west will definitely cross the river to support me. The garrison of Riverrun will be responsible for dealing with those supporting troops. We will attack them halfway across the river. The Lannister army is definitely not a match for the garrison of Riverrun." The plan was arranged, and everyone entered a state of combat readiness. Sir Blackfish took his men out to clear out the nearby scouts to prevent the other side from understanding the movements of their army, and at the same time, pass the message to the garrison in Reveron. Night fell quickly, and Robb rode on his horse, leading more than 400 cavalrymen, to set off in a mighty manner. Tonight is also a full moon. Robb and the cavalrymen waited quietly on the north bank. After an unknown amount of time, a raven's cry came from a distance. This was a secret signal between Robb and Earl Jason. As long as the other side made arrangements, they would send scouts to inform Robb. After seeing that the campfire of the troops stationed on the north bank was extinguished, Robb put on his helmet and picked up the long sword in his hand. Behind him, the wolf riders were silent and picked up their spears together. Most of the cavalry sent by Lord Jason to support were a little panicked. Many of them were just stragglers who had just suffered a defeat. If they hadn't heard that Robb had taken 300 men to defeat James' 3,000 men, many of them would have run away. They wanted to attack a legion of thousands of men with fortifications with just a few hundred cavalrymen. What's the difference between that and committing suicide? But when they saw Robb's determined eyes and the murderous atmosphere of the wolf riders, they inexplicably grew a lot of confidence in their hearts. They always felt that they could always win by following such a leader and team. The enemy has rested. Now is the best time for us to put our swords on their necks. Just follow me and charge. Robb's voice slipped out from under the helmet, sounding a little dull, but everyone heard it clearly. Abu. Under the full moon, accompanied by a long whistle of the grey wind, the sound of horse hooves was as powerful as thunder. The patrol soldiers on the north bank of the Lannister army soon discovered something unusual. Some soldiers immediately groped for the horn beside them and prepared to blow it to warn. Sizzle. A spear made of golden lightning instantly appeared on the chest of the soldier. He was paralyzed and unable to move. His face was full of confusion. Why can't he move? After the soldier fell, the patrolling soldier behind him wanted to continue to get the horn, but was immediately killed by Robb's second lightning spear in the distance. After several times, the patrolling soldiers realized that this horn was a thing that would take their lives, and it was best not to even look at it. So the few remaining soldiers could only use the most primitive method to warn, shouting, "Enemy attack! Wolves are coming!" The shouts could not spread throughout the entire camp in a short time. Without the sound of the horn to warn, 1/3 of the soldiers stationed on the north bank failed to wake up from their sleep in time. Many soldiers ran out of the tents close to Robb's army, and they were all awakened by the sound of horse hooves. Go to the fortifications. Enemy attack. Cover. Where the hell are the crossbowmen? Come here. The command system of the garrison on the north bank had not completely collapsed, and there were still mid-level officers trying to fight back. Robb took the lead, looking at the wooden anti-cavalry fence on the road, and jumped high from the horse's back, then condensed the shadow of a giant dragon. This time it was the roar of a fire dragon. Thanks to 9139 and Wang Ziohe below for their monthly tickets. Chapter 27, The Raid on Reveron. Balls of flames ejected by the dragon swept across the Lannister positions on the north bank. The fences that were originally used to defend against the cavalry charge were vulnerable to the powerful flames and were burned to charcoal in just a moment. Some archers hiding behind the fortifications were burned by the dragon flames and screamed in pain. The Lannister soldiers behind were terrified when they saw this scene, but they were no longer afraid soon, because the cavalrymen who followed closely covered the eyes of the horses with blindfolds, and then directly broke through the burned fences, and with a stab of the spear, they ended the lives of those soldiers. Shoot. Stop them, spearmen. Quickly form a formation. The Lannister officers were still commanding the battle, but they were soon spotted by Robb. Whoosh. A broken stone suddenly appeared in Robb's hand, and then shot out at a very fast speed, directly smashing the helmet of the officer who was still commanding. The powerful impact directly made his mind shake and fainted on the ground. Beast stone. It can release sharp stone flakes quickly, and can be used in succession. It is said that before the Golden Tree Age, stones were the first weapons of the beasts that gained wisdom. This is one of the beast prayers. Although it is not as powerful as the thunder gun in the dragon prayer, it is faster to use, and the pre-swing action is almost negligible. It is a very practical prayer. When an officer fell, another officer took over the command. Quickly call the lazy pigs behind to pick up your spears. Don't Before he finished speaking, a dull sound came from his head, and then he fell to the ground. One after another. Soon someone realized that, if they dared to give a command, they would fall. For a while, all the noble officers were silent. Robb glanced at the battlefield. The camp in front was directly dispersed by his men, and the camp behind seemed to have just realized that there was a night attack, and was waking up. He had to kill them before they reacted. He couldn't let these people form a spear formation, otherwise his cavalry would not be able to gain any advantage. "Follow me," Robb roared, and led more than 400 cavalrymen to set fire and charge towards the camp that had not yet reacted. The further they went inside, the more war fortifications were built. Those were all in preparation for attacking Reveron. Robb directly transformed into a dragon's head and sprayed flames whenever he saw a siege building, but the time for each spray of flames was very short, and he stopped as soon as he saw it on fire. Because releasing dragon flames will constantly consume mental strength, Robb was not yet able to support the long-term use of such a powerful dragon prayer. Is that a dragon? I'm still sleeping? I seem to see a dragon's head spraying flames. The Lannister soldiers who had just come out of the camp thought they were too excited and had hallucinations. If they were not sleeping, would they have traveled back to more than 300 years ago, when the Targaryen family rode a dragon to conquer the continent? Before they could react, the cavalrymen who rushed in with torches took their lives. Run. Help. Run. Seven gods, save us. Seeing the scene in front of them, how could the other Lannister soldiers still have any fighting spirit? Some of them came out to fight without even putting on their armor. After seeing the horrifying scene, they lost all their fighting spirit. Robb burned most of the siege equipment, and his mental strength was also exhausted. He was no longer able to cast prayer spells, and could only wait for his mental strength to slowly recover. So Robb drew two long swords from his back, and started to fight with the Lannister defenders. Surrender and no killing. Surrender and no killing. Robb galloped on his horse, followed by more than 200 wolf riders behind him. They chopped down any obstructing soldiers along the way, and galloped back and forth in the camp on the north bank, shouting the slogan of surrender and no killing to disintegrate the enemy's fighting spirit. The camp of thousands of people suddenly fell into complete chaos, with flames everywhere, and people running around. Damn it, there's a problem on the north bank. Lord Dandris Brax, an officer on the west bank of the Lannisters, saw the flames on the north bank, screams, and the roar of the strange beast from time to time, and his heart suddenly skipped a beat. Jaime led 3,000 cavalry to fight, and has been missing for a few days. Many of the cavalry who escaped back said that Jaime was captured alive by Robb. These nobles were already panicked because of this incident, and now they saw the north bank being attacked, and they were immediately in a state of confusion. Come with me to support the north bank. They are not many in number. We can win by defending the fortifications on the north bank. Lord Dandris immediately gathered his men and horses, and took 2,000 people across the river. In the dark night, the river was turbulent. When Andris was halfway through the journey, he regretted it a little. It seemed that he was too aggressive. Then he washed his face with river water to sober himself up. Regardless of whether they were reckless or not, they had to support the north bank. Otherwise, if the north bank was breached, they would be torn apart from the east bank team, and it would be easy for the enemy to breach them. Kill. Squeak. Squeak. Whoosh. At this moment, on the walls of Reveron, the originally quiet night suddenly became noisy. Hundreds of torches lit up at the same time, and the creaking catapults had been loaded long ago. Along with the shouts of the Reveron defenders, huge stones were thrown at the Lannister army that was still crossing the river. They had fallen into a trap. Lord Dandris felt a chill in his heart. But this was not the worst news, because he heard another burst of shouts of killing. Follow me. 3 sides are missing. Don't surround them too tightly. Let them run. Kill them. For the young wolf. For Lord Ned. For Reveron. On the west bank, Lord Jason Lannister, who had been lying in ambush for a long time, saw that everything was going according to plan, so he rushed up with his 2,000 men, and launched a fierce attack on the Lannister army on the west bank. Creak, clang. The gate on the west side of Reveron opened, and the drawbridge, that had been hanging for many days, was finally lowered. The excited river army, led by Lord Lakewood, also rushed out. The two teams formed a double team and encircled the Lannister army on the west bank, shouting, "It's over. It's all over." Lord Danvers saw that the army left behind on the west bank was in disarray, and countless soldiers laid down their weapons and surrendered before the battle began. Several boats on his side were also smashed by stones from catapults. Fortunately, he didn't have to worry about these trivial matters soon, because he saw a huge rock flying towards him. His boat was about to capsize. Chapter 28 Deroshi Cavalry. After a night of arduous fighting, the Lannister army besieging Riverrun was completely defeated by Robb. The Lannister army on the north and west banks was slaughtered. Most of the soldiers fled or surrendered, and the soldiers who dared to stay and resisted all became innocent souls. At the beginning, the Lannister garrison that originally stayed on the west bank tried to organize a shield wall to resist, but the Riverrun garrison attacked from behind under the leadership of Earl Titus Blackwood, and the battle situation on the west bank was even more tragic than that on the north bank. As for the east bank army, that had not taken any action, Sir Fowler Prest, who stayed behind, saw that the battle situation was irreversible, and directly led his 4,000 men to retreat safely in an orderly manner. And a Deroshi mercenary who was responsible for leading the Free Riders cut down the flag of the Lannister family and switched to the Stark side. After the battle, Sir Blackfish dragged his tired body to report the battle situation last night to Robb. "Lord Robb, Earl Andros's ship was hit by our catapult. Because he was wearing heavy armor, he never climbed up after the ship capsized. We lost 200 people in the battle, killed more than 2,000 enemies, captured more than 3,000 people, and seized countless supplies. We are arranging people to count them." Robb felt a little tired. The blood on his body had not dried up after a night of bloody battle. But he couldn't rest yet. As the leader of a team, he still had a lot of things to deal with. "Have you found my uncle Edgemere Tully?" Sir Blackfish's tone was finally much more relaxed. "Yes. He was imprisoned in the same prisoner of war camp with a group of Riverland nobles, but he has lost a lot of weight." Robb nodded. "Send them to Riverrun for resettlement first. I will go to see them later. Now let the Tyrosh mercenary come to see me." Tyrosh is a free city-state, but it does not belong to the continent of Westeros, but is a member of the Land of Strife, a port city rich in mercenaries and slaves. I think the Kingslayer James specially recruited these free riders for this battle. But I didn't expect that these people were not strong in fighting spirit. Seeing that the Lannister family was about to be defeated, they actually changed their appearance and defected to Robb. Faced with these cavalrymen who came to the door, Robb certainly had no reason to turn them away, but the loyalty of these people was questionable, and it was not an easy task to subdue them. The mercenary who cut down the Lannister family's flag was soon brought to Robb. The rider had an ordinary face, but his beard was very strange. It was not only very long, but also a rare grey-green color. While Robb was looking at him, the green-bearded mercenary was also observing the young wolf lord. Blue eyes, reddish-brown hair, and a strong body. He was no different from an ordinary person. It was said that the young wolf lord could transform into a dragon and sweep across the battlefield. I wonder if it was true. No matter what he thought in his heart, as a defeated general, Greenbeard knelt on one knee and offered his loyalty to his new boss. "My name is Peralt, and others call me Greenbeard. I'm willing to fight for the new king on behalf of the 300 riders and 600 horses of Deroshi." Robb stood under a tree and looked down at Greenbeard. "I heard that the people of Deroshi are known for their greed." Greenbeard felt his scalp tingling. It was really difficult to respond to this, so he could only remain silent. Robb changed the subject. "Actually, greed is not a bad thing. People always have something to gain. If everyone is a saint, without desires, how can I get them to do things for me?" Greenbeard breathed a sigh of relief, feeling much more at ease. "Don't worry, my lord. The Lannister commanders are too stupid. We can see that they are no match for you, so we joined your team." "Really? It seems that you don't have any psychological burden about changing your team." Greenbeard's heart, which had just settled down, was lifted up again. His life is in the hands of others, and it is really easy for them to manipulate him. No, we. Robb interrupted Greenbeard's words. "Actually, this is also good. We pay the money, and you work hard. As long as we abide by the rules of the transaction, everyone will be happy, right?" Yes. Greenbeard felt like a puppet, being manipulated up and down by others, and his mood was completely swayed by the other party's words. Wiping the cold sweat from his forehead, Greenbeard felt that the young man in front of him seemed to have means beyond his age. Robb walked up to Greenbeard, stretched out his hand, and touched his head. The blood that had not yet dried smeared Greenbeard's head. Greenbeard did not dare to say a word. "Since you have already sold your life to me, then take me to see the warriors of Tyrosh." Greenbeard breathed a sigh of relief. This level was finally passed. Robb knew that the loyalty of this group of mercenaries would definitely not be high, but loyalty and sense of honor can be cultivated after birth. It only depends on one's own methods. Now that 1/3 of the wolf cavalry has been lost, Robb also needs cavalry to replenish. This group of Tyrosh cavalry can just replenish the troops. Moreover, this Greenbeard and this group of cavalry came from the East Continent and were very familiar with it. They will definitely be useful in the future. After seeing the Tyrosh mercenaries, it was somewhat beyond Robb's expectations that the overall quality of these mercenaries was quite good, and each of them met Robb's rigid requirements for wolf cavalry. But this was also reasonable. These people came across the ocean to Westeros to be mercenaries on the battlefield. If they were not confident in their own strength, they would not dare to do so. With these 300 Tyrosh riders, Robb's wolf riders expanded to more than 500 people, but their fighting power might not be as good as the previous 300 people. Let them get along with the original wolf riders for a while, and then train them, and their fighting power should soar soon. Greenbeard also brought Robb a piece of information. The Lannister army on the east coast has 4,000 people. 2,000 spearmen and 2,000 archers, and they are probably going to join up with Duke Tywin on the King's Road. Duke Tywin still has a team of more than 20,000 people, and they are rushing here non-stop. Robb smiled and said, "I still have a team of 15,000 people chasing Tywin's ass, and he is probably still far away from us now." Greenbeard was shocked when he heard Robb's words. This young wolf lord defeated the Lannister family's team of more than 10,000 people with less than 3,000 people. He still has a team of more than 10,000 people. Isn't the Lannister family doomed to fail? Robb no longer paid attention to Greenbeard. The siege of Riverrun had just been lifted, and Tywin still controlled most of the Riverlands. He still had a lot of things to do. "Sir Blackfish, come with me into the city. Let's see how Lord Tully is doing now." Thanks to you and Lin Ke for their monthly tickets. Chapter 29 Grandpa's Entrustment. Led by his uncle Edmure Tully, Robb came to his grandfather's study. Riverrun is a three-sided structure, and the Duke's study is also triangular, with a protruding stone balcony on the east side, like the bow of a huge sandstone ship. In Robb's memory, Grandpa Hoster Tully has always been huge, but now he seems to be a little shrunk, with all the muscles melted into the bones, and his hair and beard have turned completely white. Uncle Edmure spoke softly, "Father, your grandson is here." Hearing Edmure's voice, Duke Tully opened his eyes. He had the same blue eyes as Robb. Robb of the Little Cat family, I remember him. He inherited my eyes. Duke Tully's voice was very small and painful. He groped with both hands, trying to hold Robb's hand. Robb hurried forward and took his grandfather's hand. Although the hand was big before, it now looked withered, with loose skin covering the bones, and it had long lost all its strength. Even though he was seriously ill, Duke Tully still summoned his vassals without hesitation, and fought for his family and the Lannister family. This feeling moved Robb a little. Robb's palm burst into golden light. "Grandpa, it's me. Don't speak for now." Edmure was surprised to find that two golden rings suddenly appeared on the ground, with Robb as the center, and a comfortable airwave burst out. Edmure had never felt this feeling before, but he inexplicably felt that this was a blessing that only the gods would bestow, and a baptism that only the most devout believers could enjoy. Blessing grace, the prayer of the faded one with the capacity of a king. It can include the surrounding friendly characters and cure abnormal conditions. The golden light exploded, and Duke Tully, who was wrapped in the golden light, only felt warm on his body. Originally, his stomach was extremely painful, as if countless crabs were clamped in his stomach, and he could only rely on medicine to relieve the pain. Now it has recovered as before. He was surprised to find that he was hungry. For Duke Tully, who had not eaten properly for a long time, this feeling had not come for a long time. At this moment, he even wanted to cry. My body doesn't hurt anymore. Edgemure was delighted to see his father's complexion improve. What happened? Robb explained. Grandpa's condition is very serious. I can't completely cure him. I can only relieve his pain. This is already very good. Edgemure muttered to himself. He hated himself very much when he saw his father's weak and painful appearance. Now that his father's pain was alleviated, he felt very relieved. Edgemure said gratefully, "Thank you, Robb." Robb waved his hand. "We are all family. There is no need to say thank you. If I have to say thank you, it should be me. You have suffered for my father." Uncle Edgemure's body was covered with scars, and there was a bandage around his neck. It was left when he fought with the Kingslayer. He almost died on the battlefield. Lord Tully's eyes regained their spirit. He looked at Robb, a loving smile on his face. "You were only this big before, but now you can lead troops to fight. I asked them to carry me to the city gate tower last night, and I saw it. You did a good job. The torches were like the tide. I heard screams on the other side of the river, and the whole siege tower was on fire. You are better than your uncle." Robb smiled and said, "It's just a trivial matter. Grandpa, not only me, but Sir Brynden is here too." Hearing that his brother was back, Lord Tully's eyes lit up. "Is he back from the Vale of Rin? Where's little Kate? Where's Lyssa? Are they here too?" "My mother went to the deer house to find Robert's third brother. Aunt Lyssa didn't come in the Vale of Rin." Robb shook his head. "She has to take care of her son. She should come. How could she not come?" Lord Tully was a little dissatisfied. "Is Blackfish married?" "No." Lord Tully was even more dissatisfied. I told him. I ordered him to get married. I'm his lord. He knows I have the right to arrange a marriage for him." Robb saw that his grandfather was so old, but still had a childish temper. He couldn't help but find it funny. Sir Blackfish fights bravely and knows how to use strategies. Without him our war will be difficult to fight. He has been a material for leading troops to fight since he was a child. He does have the ability in this area. He used to be called the Knight of the Bloody Gate, right? This Blackfish." Lord Tully glanced at Robb, then at his son, sighed, waved to his son. "I have something to say to Robb." Edgemure understood what his father meant and walked out a little disappointed. "You've done a good job. What are your plans next?" Robb thought for a moment and told the truth. "I want to rescue my family first. Now I will send troops to attack the Lannister family's territory and put pressure on them, but I don't want to fight to King's Landing. The current situation is still complicated." Lord Tully nodded. "You have a good idea, worthy of being Ned's son. I don't have a few days to live, I know. Edgemure is not as good as you. If it were peacetime, he could still be a good duke, but now, he can't defend the Riverlands." Seeing that his grandfather spoke so bluntly, Robb did not hide his thoughts. Although Uncle Edgemure is not first class in leading troops to fight, he has a good reputation among the lords and is suitable for managing all matters in the territory. As for the military, I think Sir Blackfish will be a good candidate. Lord Tully stared into Robb's eyes, which were his inherited eyes. "You are indeed a man with ideas, but this is a good thing for our family." He meant that Robb wanted to get involved in the Riverlands, but Duke Tully knew that the situation outside was critical and the Riverlands had to rely on the north to get through the difficulties. It was not difficult to accept Robb's submission. Duke Tully was old and had experienced so many ups and downs on the continent. He knew which path was the most suitable. Robb defeated the Lannister family's army with only such a small number of people and captured the Kingslayer Jaime alive. This great achievement was enough to make Robb's name spread throughout the entire Westeros continent. In contrast, his son was defeated by Jaime and captured by the other side. His reputation had dropped to the lowest point. In any case, he could not compete with Robb for the position of commander. Robb looked at his grandfather solemnly. "You are my family, and I will not let any of my family be treated unfairly. At any time, you are the Duke of the Riverlands, and Uncle Edgemure will retain his title." Duke Tully looked at Robb and said nothing more. "The future of the Riverlands is in your hands." Chapter 30 Respective Arrangements. Lord Tully was not in good health, and he had to meet his brother Sir Blackfish. The two would quarrel when they met, so Robb did not stay in his grandfather's study for long. After a night of fighting, Robb was very tired, so he found a room and slept until noon. After lunch, Robb's first thing was to call a meeting of the lords. In the meeting room of Reveron, Robb sat in the first seat, and his uncle Sir Edgemure sat on Robb's left. The other nobles did not think anything was wrong. After leading 2 unprecedented battles, Robb's prestige reached its peak, and now the title of Young Wolf Lord is known to everyone. There were 6 people attending this meeting. They were Lord Jason Mallister of Seamarsh, Lord Titus Lakewood who defended Reveron, Lord Edgemure Tully and Lord Blackfish, uncle and nephew, and finally Robb and Theon Greyjoy. Robb spoke first. Everyone present here has made a great contribution to the victory in the raid on Reveron. But Tywin's army has not been wiped out, my family has not been rescued, and the battle continues. Sir Blackfish had just had a big fight with his brother and his face was still a little red, but it did not prevent his men from collecting intelligence. He took out a piece of paper. Lord Tywin defeated the Northern army not long ago, but did not cause many casualties, and then he led his army to Reveron quickly. According to the intelligence of the spies, in order to hurry, he abandoned the wounded on the road and compressed the rest time. Many soldiers died along the way, and many soldiers ran away. Lord Robos Bolton led his men to harass several times, but they were all repelled by Lord Tywin. Robb nodded. It seems that Old Flade is no match for Tywin, but after knowing that Jaime has been captured by me, the old thing Tywin will definitely not come to die. He will definitely find the castle to guard and wait for the opportunity. Old Flade does not need too many people. You write a letter to him and let him continue to confront Tywin. As for Grejon, Robb Stark, and Maggie, let them bring their teams to Reveron to meet us. Sir Blackfish nodded in agreement. He had become accustomed to Robb's orders without realizing it. Robb continued, Sir Blackfish, I admire your ability. I hope you will be in charge of the intelligence work of the Special Army. How about you be my intelligence officer? Sir Blackfish had mixed feelings in his heart. He was angry at his brother for meddling in his marriage, so he set up his own business and went to work for his niece, but he was never valued. Now he finally found a position where he could use his talents. I won't let you down. Sir Blackfish agreed very happily. Robb was very satisfied. His army had added another fierce general. Uncle Edgemure. Jaime broke up the army in the Riverlands before, and now there are still many soldiers scattered outside. I hope you can gather all these soldiers back in the name of the Tully family. They are all usable forces. Edgemure Tully felt a little ashamed. He was defeated because he was not as capable as Jaime, and now he had to face those remnants of the defeated army by himself. He felt a little ashamed, but this was something he could only do. The people in the Riverlands were loyal to the Tully family, and Duke Tully was in poor health. As the only heir, he had to shoulder this task. I will do it, but I don't know how many people are still alive. Robb also made an intentional arrangement. People have to face up to their past failures and overcome them in order to grow. Turning his head to look at the 2 earls, Robb also had their own arrangements. Lord Lakewood, your crowhold has been breached. Tywin has your family in his hands. There are still many lords in the Riverlands in Tywin's hands. We also have Tywin's nephew and many lords in the west. You will be responsible for exchanging hostages with Tywin. Lord Lakewood has been defending Reveron these days, and his contribution is no less than anyone present. He has been anxious since he learned that his family was captured. Now Robb has given him a chance. He looked at Robb gratefully. Don't worry, I will never do anything that would damage my reputation because of my personal feelings. Robb looked at Lord Jason Mallister again. Lord Jason, when my people arrive, we will continue to move westward and fight to the westerlies. Tywin led his men to burn, kill and loot in the Riverlands. Countless people were slaughtered by him, and countless wealth was plundered by him. We must take revenge. After Robb seized Reveron, he cut off the connection between Tywin and the westerlies. Now Tywin can only get supplies from King's Landing, and the westerlies have become isolated territories. Moreover, most of the troops in the westerlies have been withdrawn by Tywin and Jaime. Now they are almost like fish on the chopping board, not only plump, but also threatening. Lord Jason Mallister was naturally satisfied with this good job. Seeing that the meeting was about to end, Theon found that he had not been assigned any tasks yet. Thinking that he might be able to do a better job, he took the initiative to volunteer. Robb, there are still my father's troops in the Iron Islands. I can go back and persuade my father to send troops to support. Theon Greyjoy is from the Greyjoy family in the Iron Islands. The family emblem is a squid-like pattern, so it is also called the Squid family. The land in the Iron Islands is barren, and the people's living habits are relatively barbaric, relying on robbery for a living. They rebelled before, but at that time Ned Stark and former King Robert went out together and directly defeated the Greyjoy family. They still killed 2 men in the family, leaving only the 10-year-old Theon Greyjoy. Ned couldn't bear to kill them all, and didn't want the Iron Islands to have another rebellion, so he took Theon Greyjoy back to Winterfell to raise him. Because Ned is an upright person, he also has feelings for Theon. He did not continue the grievances of the previous generation to Theon, and let him and Robb become friends since childhood. Robb glanced at Theon, and knew that in the original timeline, the other party betrayed the Stark family under his father's education after returning. It's a bit tangled. Robb is not tangled in whether to let Theon go back or not. Now Robb actually hopes that the Iron Islands will rebel, and even if the Iron Islands don't rebel, Robb will make the Iron Islands rebel. Because the Iron Islands are related to a very critical part of his plan. But Theon is a member of the Wolf Riders who followed him to fight twice, and with his memories, he still has some feelings. After thinking for a moment, Robb agreed to Theon's request. You have taken a different path from your previous life, and I don't know what to choose after returning to the Iron Islands. This is a test for you. If you can pass it, then you and I are still brothers. If you are the same as before, you choose your own path, and I hope you don't stand on the opposite side of me. Robb looked at the happy Theon and prayed silently in his heart. It's on the second round of recommendations. Thank you for your support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 31. It hurt me so much. Gretchen and Rickard Karstark came to Reveron with their army. They also brought us sad news. Ned Stark was executed by the false Emperor Joffrey. In the meeting hall, Robb convened another meeting, and the nobles of the North and the Riverlands gathered together. Gretchen was extremely sad, and he immediately shed tears when he saw Robb's figure. The Lannisters will pay the price. I swear to God that I will avenge Lord Ned. Rickard Karstark was also very angry. Kingslayer. We will chop off the head of the Kingslayer, and we must take revenge. Robb sat on a chair, holding a glass of beer, with a cold look. The Kingslayer cannot be killed. I will soon exchange him for my sister. Moreover, he is not the murderer who killed my father. The debt should be collected from the person who owes us. We want to kill Joffrey. Now Robb has no interest in executing Jaime. This is not in line with his character. It is useless to instill anger on irrelevant people. If it was Cersei who advocated killing Ned, he might have killed Jaime. After all, Jaime was the person Cersei cared about the most. Doing so would make Cersei lose her mind. This was a strategy. But Joffrey was originally a flawed monster. Even if Jaime's head was placed in front of him, he would only be afraid, but not sad at all. On the way here, the Gretchen had heard about Robb's great achievements. At this time, his admiration and loyalty to Robb had reached its peak. He did not object to what Robb said. Rickard Karstark's eldest son was captured by Tywin. Robb was exchanging his captured hostages with Tywin. He was grateful for what Robb had done, so he said nothing more. The Gretchen said in a gruff voice, "My lord, we will listen to you as to what we should do next." Robb looked at Sir Blackfish while drinking ale. Sir Blackfish nodded slightly and told the news he had just received. Former King Robert's third brother, Renly, has called himself king. He has married into the Rose family of Highgarden, formed an army of 100,000, and is about to attack Joffrey. The Gretchen was shocked. 100,000 troops? How can there be so many people? Sir Blackfish explained. After former King Robert Baratheon took the throne, Renly Baratheon inherited Robert's original dukedom. I heard that he is a good man, and many nobles in the Stormlands obey him. Rickard Karstark added. He has also formed an alliance with Highgarden and the River Reach. The River Reach is the richest region. It is not impossible for the two duchies together to gather an army of 100,000. There are 7 duchies and 1 capital. King's Landing, in Westeros. Now 5 duches are caught up in this chaotic struggle. For a moment, no one can say who will have the last laugh. Robb knew the time was not right. The situation is chaotic. Let them fight each other now. The most important thing is to exchange my sister back. Earl Titus Lakewood has taken Robb's order to King's Landing to discuss the exchange of prisoners with Tywin's army, and this matter will be done soon. Sir Blackfish felt that the current situation was not good. We and the Lannisters are already at war. If we trade with the false Emperor Joffrey, we will immediately become a thorn in the eyes of the new King Renly. Great John immediately retorted loudly, "What a shitty king. I don't know that bastard king." The nobles of the Riverlands also shouted in unison. Most of their territories were looted by the Lannisters, and they had been holding their breath for a long time. But they also knew that they were not the opponent of the Lannisters, so they hoped that Robb could lead them to loot the Westerlands. This was not only revenge, but they wanted to recover their losses. The father and son of the Lannister family plundered our land and slaughtered our people. The castles of all the lords present here are now only charred ruins. Can the so-called King Renly give us justice? If he can't, he is not our king. Maggie of Bear Island had been silent before. At this moment, she stood up suddenly and scolded the nobles. "You said Joffrey was a false emperor, and you said Renly could not give you justice. Do you want to be independent?" The nobles of the Riverlands and the North were speechless. Of course, they did not have the capital to be independent, but their inability did not mean that others could not. Everyone turned their eyes to Robb, who was silent. Robb looked normal, but he said nothing. At this time, the loud-voiced regent slammed the table and said, "My lords." He shouted loudly, and his voice echoed in the house. "Listen to my opinion of these two kings. Renly Baratheon is shit to me. Why should we let the people of Highgarden sitting on the ground with flowers and the man who doesn't know whether to like men or women rule us? How can they understand the wall, the wolf forest and the tomb of the first men? Even the gods they believe in are not true gods, the 7 gods. I'm so tired of them. As for the Lannisters, let the White Walkers catch them. I've had enough." The nobles of the Riverlands looked a little embarrassed. Their faith was also the 7 gods, but this was not the time to talk about faith. When discussing the situation on the battlefield, the 7 gods could only be wronged. The regent stretched his hand over his shoulder, drew out a terrifying 2-handed giant sword, and pointed it at Robb. "Why can't we manage ourselves like before? My lords, I will kneel, but I will only kneel to this king," he said in a thunderous voice. "Long live the king in the north." Then the regent knelt down and placed his sword at Robb's feet. "Long live the king in the north." Meager Mormont stood up and then placed her spiked mace next to the regent's sword. Lord Rickard Karstark immediately followed and did the same. Robb, who had been expressionless, finally reacted with an overly surprised expression on his face. What are you doing? Get up, don't do this." At this time, the river nobles also stood up one after another. Although the Lannister family and other families had never been ruled by Winterfell, they stood up one by one, drew their swords, and knelt. Everyone shouted an ancient name together. "King in the North. King in the North." Robb seemed a little at a loss. "How could you do this? What are you doing? How can I usurp the throne?" Maggie took out a pure gold crown that had been made long ago and actually suppressed Robb and forced the crown onto Robb's head. It was an extremely exquisite crown with a golden tree carved in the middle and a wolf staring ahead among the trees. Robb had no ability to resist at all and could only watch the crown on his head, fitting perfectly. "Oh, you really hurt me." Robb was furious. Chapter 30 To the King's Ministers. The instinct to become a king is ingrained in Robb's soul. The nobles of the Riverlands are eager for someone to lead them and take revenge on the Lannister family. The lords of the North are unwilling to make a wasted trip. They now have a huge advantage and are eager to gain more benefits in the war. War is a beast that chooses people to devour and never knows how to be satisfied. Once it starts, it will quickly arouse the desires in people's hearts until they are temporarily filled. Obviously, the desires of the Riverlands and the Lords of the North are far from being filled. The behemoth of war is still dormant in everyone's heart, so it is natural for Robb to be supported as the King of the North. Although his acting skills are a bit superficial, fortunately no one cares about this. After the performance, Robb returned to his original expression and set the tone for the play. At present, our essence is to restore the status of the North as an independent kingdom 300 years ago, not to claim the entire Westeros continent like Joffrey and Renly did. But I will no longer inherit the title of Duke and be promoted to King. As for legal principles, don't worry about it. Just like the Targaryen family conquered the Westeros continent, the power I have is the reason why I'm king. A wave of carnival was set off in the hearts of the nobles in the Riverlands and the North. The boss officially claimed his throne. From now on, Robb Stark became the king of the North, and the territory he governed spread from the North to the Riverlands. The boss's status has been improved, which is a great thing. If the boss doesn't get promoted, how can he get promoted? If he doesn't get promoted, how can his subordinates get promoted? How can the subordinates work for him if they can't get benefits? If the subordinates don't work hard, there will be no one in their hands, and the boss will not value himself. How can he get promoted? This is the cycle of war. Seeing the joyful expressions on his men's faces, Robb began to arrange the work. Great John, Rickard Stark and Lord Jason Lannister, the three of you will take your men to the west bank of Riverrun and station there. The town there is big enough to accommodate you. When the hostage exchange is completed, you will immediately launch an army to attack the Westerlands and encroach on their territory. Take away all the money, food, and people. The Riverlands have been hit hard. If you don't take them back, they won't be replenished in a short time. The three brave earls nodded in agreement, their faces full of excitement. Robbery is always a good job. They are ready for a big battle. After the meeting, Robb came to his grandfather's study, sat alone in a chair, and began to think about things that he couldn't tell his men. After 2 battles against the sky, his prestige in the North and the Riverlands has reached its peak. The most obvious change is that there will no longer be nobles like Old Weasel who want to bargain with him when he wants him to send troops. But secretly, it's hard to say what everyone thinks. Robb took out a piece of paper and wrote down the names of 4 people. The first one was Catelyn. Mother went to the new King Renly to lobby the Rose family. Renly held a wedding with Little Rose on the surface, but he likes men and got together with the Knight of Flowers of the Rose family. I guess the news of my victory over the Lannisters will soon reach Mother, and King Renly will die inexplicably because of the evil magic cast by his brother. With Mother's ability, there should be a chance to marry the Rose family. On the paper, Robb marked his mother Catelyn with a red pen, which meant that everything went well. The next one was Earl Titus Lakewood, who went to King's Landing to negotiate with Tywin's army. He brought many of Robb's requests, the most important of which was to exchange hostages. Joffrey was easy to deal with, but Tywin and Cersei were not easy to deal with. Earl Lakewood's trip should not be too smooth, but he had the advantage in the battle situation, and should be able to achieve his goal in the end. Robb painted black on the name of Titus Lakewood, which means there is a problem, but the result will be as he wishes. After painting, Robb looked at the name of Theon Greyjoy, who was sent to the Iron Islands. As a companion who grew up with him, Theon's personal ability is not a problem, but he came to the Stark family as a hostage. Although he has been baptized by his own 2 battles, it is still unknown whether he can withstand the intimidation of his father. Unlike the original timeline, Robb knew that the Iron Islands would rebel and attack the North with a large army, so all the movements of the Iron Islands are currently under Robb's control, and Theon's personal choice is powerless to change the overall situation. The reason why Robb is willing to let him go back is also a test of loyalty. I just hope he can make the right decision. Robb did not make any move on the name of Theon Greyjoy because he is insignificant. Robb looked at the last name, Roose Bolton. Roose Bolton is now guarding the King's Road with 10,000 men and is in a standoff with Tywin's army at Harrenhal. Although he was defeated before, his opponent is Tywin. Roose Bolton can hold on under Tywin's attack, which shows that his military talent is not weak. If possible, Robb still wants to subdue Roose Bolton for his own use. He has already knocked on him several times before, but he doesn't know if this old guy can see the situation clearly. Robb drew a mark on Roose Bolton's name, which means that this person still needs to be examined. After thinking about the situation of the 4 important officials he sent out, Robb began to deal with the affairs of the Riverlands and Riverrun, of course, mainly military affairs. Before exchanging hostages with the Lannister family, the attack on the Westerlands must be slowed down, but we can't do nothing. To resist foreign aggression, we must first stabilize the internal situation. We were in a hurry before, and now we finally have time to settle the internal affairs. Robb's eyes wandered on the map of the north and the Riverlands, and finally determined his first target, Reveran City. The old weasel of Luon City still has 4,000 men under his command, and they are also a force that cannot be ignored. We had an enmity with the old weasel before, so we can't use these people. Now we have time to find fault with him and settle accounts properly. After ringing the bell, a gorgeously dressed maid walked into the study. Go and call Sir Stephen Free. Soon, Stephen Free, who was wearing armor and almost old enough to be Robb's grandfather, walked into the study. After pushing open the door, he knelt on one knee and said, "Your Majesty, what do you want to call me for?" Robb nodded and said, "Have you communicated with your father recently?" Stephen Free was shocked and didn't know if this was Robb's test. After all, Marquis Free wanted to ask for benefits, but was taught a lesson by Robb, which made the relationship between the two not so harmonious. However, he is the eldest son of the old weasel and the heir to Luon City. It is normal for him to communicate. After realizing this, Stephen Free nodded. "There is a communication, sir. My father congratulates you on your brilliant victory." Robb smiled. "Congratulations to me? I'm afraid his pants are wet with fear now. Thanks to book friend 20230710134736529 and avoiding poison at home for their monthly tickets." Chapter 33 Robb's Orders. Stephen Free bowed his head. "Father has great respect for you and will never make the same mistake again." Robb looked at him and suddenly said, "You are already over 60 years old." "Yes, Your Majesty." Stephen Free's heart moved. Robb and Stephen have always had an unspoken understanding. Robb likes to mention Stephen's age intentionally or unintentionally, and says something like it is rare to have an heir over 60 years old in the world, because there are too many sons and Lord Free is too old. The Free family has never been very harmonious and the family affection is indifferent. Some sons and grandsons are even willing to flatter Lord Free without any bottom line, but lack respect for Stephen. This is not difficult to understand. In Westeros, over 60 years old is already an advanced age. It is still unknown who will die first between him and Lord Free. So the anxiety and uneasiness in Stephen Free's heart slowly eroded the family affection. At least the family affection for his father and brothers has been almost worn out. Robb saw through the situation within the Free family, so he chose Stephen Free to be by his side. This was a bet. "You have fought with my wolf riders, so you are half my knight. Go back and write a letter to your father, saying that I will visit him soon. Just like last time, I will only bring my wolf riders. You should come with me." Stephen Free lowered his head, and his old hands trembled slightly. "Yes, Your Majesty." The Riverlands had been ravaged by the Lannister family before, and each lord suffered heavy losses, which also led to many civilians being slaughtered and displaced. With more refugees and less living supplies, robbers and bandits will naturally appear. Robb has asked his uncle Edgemere to collect supplies in the Riverlands and recruit the lost soldiers, but this cannot completely change the chaos in the Riverlands. Robb wants to go north to Luon City, so he can take this opportunity to train his wolf riders and eliminate the robbers along the way. Before leaving, Robb met with Maggie and Sir Blackfish from Bear Island alone and gave them some advice. One of them was Robb's whip of military lore and the other was his eyes and ears on the battlefield. Robb valued them very much. Finally, Robb went to see his grandfather again. His grandfather's physical functions had recovered a little, but he was inevitably declining. Robb didn't want him to worry about these things anymore, so he just chatted about some family matters and left. In the afternoon, Robb came to the camp, where the wolf riders were stationed. Little John and Greenbird, who had received the news, came to greet him. Greenbird was a little nervous. "Your Majesty, Your Majesty, we are at your disposal." After Little John saluted, he said excitedly, "Your Majesty, we are all ready and can set off at any time." Since the Battle of the Whispering Wood and the Battle of Reveran, the invincible reputation of the wolf riders under the young wolf has spread throughout the continent. In the camp of Reveran, the wolf riders are well known, and even many ordinary soldiers come to watch, wanting to see what the legendary wolf riders look like. This gave the wolf riders a great sense of satisfaction. This feeling of being respected and admired made them feel ecstatic, which made the wolf riders subconsciously restrain themselves with stricter requirements to make themselves meet the expectations of others. This is a very common psychology. Therefore, the excited expressions of the wolf riders formed a sharp contrast with the somewhat depressed and uneasy Taroshi mercenaries. Robb glanced at the Taroshi mercenaries and then at the original wolf riders. The two groups of people were clearly divided. It seems that in the past few days of getting along, Little John did not let these people be infected with a collective sense of honor of the wolf riders. This is not a good sign. The wolf riders that Robb needs are a whole, a derivative of his own body. He must be able to command and control them at will, but the two groups of people who are now divided cannot do this. This time on the way to Luan City, we must solve this problem. Robb made up his mind, rode his horse to the Taroshi mercenaries, and spoke slowly. How much did Jaime pay you? Greenbeard on the side hadn't reacted yet. What did you say? Robb said lightly. Aren't you mercenaries? Jaime pays you, so you are willing to work for him, right? The mercenaries looked at each other, and one of them said boldly, Your Majesty, we fight a battle and the Lannisters give us 2 silver deer each. Robb laughed. With just this little money, why are you playing with your life? Little John, tell them how much money they can get after becoming wolf riders. Little John held his head high and proudly announced, From now on, you can get a gold dragon every month. Wow. All the Taroshi mercenaries were in an uproar. They didn't expect their new boss to be so generous. A gold dragon? Exclamation mark. A farmer's son can't earn a gold dragon in his lifetime. He can get so much money in just 1 month. Exclamation mark. Little John saw that the Taroshi mercenaries had lost their discipline all of a sudden, and everyone was whispering excitedly, and he was immediately furious. The wolf riders were the most elite troops under Lord Bloodwolf. How could they be Solax? He called Robb Bloodwolf. Bloodwolf was the private title given to Robb by the wolf riders led by Little John. They had all witnessed Robb fighting 1 against 100 on the battlefield, covered in blood. Lord Ned is dead, so he is no longer the young wolf lord. He is the Wolf King. What Wolf King? Didn't you see what Robb looked like that day? My legs were shaking when I saw him. It was so scary, just like he crawled out of a sea of blood. He is a blood wolf. Blood wolf, that's a good name. I guarantee that Joffrey the bastard will pee his pants when he hears that name. In such discussions, after a while, the wolf riders agreed to call Robb Blood Wolf in order to distinguish their own respect for Robb from others. Little John felt that he had an obligation to teach these mercenaries what the rules were. Shut up, you idiots. Can't you see His Majesty is here? Shut up and be quiet. Who are you from? How dare you teach us how to do things? Some of the mercenaries were immediately dissatisfied. They were free mercenaries, born to be unrestrained and uninhibited. Seeing someone dare to scold them, they naturally did not want to show weakness and started to curse. Little John was furious, picked up the whip, and walked towards the man. He whipped it and left a red mark on the man's face. Snap. This was like cold water poured into a frying pan. The whole camp was boiling. More than 300 Taroshi mercenaries were furious. They drew their weapons, glared at Little John, and said dirty words, as if they were going to tear Little John into pieces in the next second. The wolf riders turned quickly and confronted the Taroshi mercenaries, but none of them drew their weapons or spoke. They just stood there and remained silent, because they did not hear Robb's order. Chapter 34 Your Identity. Stop, what are you trying to do? Greenbeard was startled. They were now in Robb's camp, with tens of thousands of troops waiting outside. If there was any trouble, they would be the ones to suffer. But his voice was too small and his prestige was not enough, so he could only watch the Tarosh mercenaries getting more and more angry. Some people had already used their chests to maliciously collide with Little John's chest, provoking each other. Robb watched the farce in front of him with interest, knowing that Little John was considering his orders and did not fight with these mercenaries. After thinking about it, Robb came to a stand and sat down leisurely. Interesting. Take off the armor. Even when Little John was in conflict with the other party, a large part of his attention was on Robb. Hearing Robb's words, he immediately shouted, "Take off the armor. Take off the armor. Take off the armor." Several wolf riders who were born into noble families like Little John shouted one by one, and all the wolf riders heard Robb's order. They took off their leather armor without hesitation. The armor they wore during wartime was very heavy, and they usually wore leather armor during training. Seeing the opponent's almost uniform movements, the Taroshi mercenaries who were still cursing were a little at a loss, not knowing what the opponent was doing. Obviously, none of them heard Robb's order. A brief silence appeared in the camp. When the wolf riders took off their leather armor and put away their weapons, the Taroshi mercenaries were still in an inexplicable state, still holding their weapons in their hands. Looking around, no one spoke, and Greenbeard was frightened. Seeing that the opponent was still indifferent, Little John was the first to speak. "Take off your armor." More than 200 people behind him roared in unison, "Take off your armor." The sound resounded through the sky, and many mercenaries were even scared to drop their weapons on the ground. Greenbeard looked at Robb, who was sitting in the upper seat, and he still had that unpredictable smile on his face, and he couldn't help but start to panic. His life and the lives of these mercenaries were in the hands of this teenager. As long as the other party was willing, there would be 300 more bodies in the motive Reverin the next day. Greenbeard was quite quick to react. He understood Robb's intention before the situation got out of control. He immediately ran around the mercenary formation, shouting, "Take off your leather armor and put down your weapons. His Majesty has ordered us to fight them barehanded." Greenbeard was sweating profusely, fearing that someone had not heard his voice. The mercenaries heard Greenbeard's voice. Most of them looked at the wolf riders in front of them. They had already accumulated a lot of anger in their hearts. Now that they heard that they could fight with the other party, they also took off their leather armor in a proper manner. However, some mercenaries were used to being unruly and complained over there. "Your Majesty, you are nothing but a brat. Only idiots who are hated by the 7 gods would fight with bare hands. I'm a knight, and I will never take off my weapons and leather armor. Draw your sword. Let those wolf cubs see who is the real battlefield. I'm a mercenary from Taroshi. Even if he gives me a gold dragon, so what? I'm not comfortable here. What can he do if I ride away? Who cares about this little brat?" Sizzle. Just as those mercenaries wearing leather armor and shouting loudly continued to speak nonsense, suddenly there was a sound of thunder in the sky. Crackling. A golden thunder suddenly descended from the sky and struck a Taroshi mercenary's head fiercely. This thunder appeared without any signs. At this time, the sky was clear and no one reacted. The mercenary didn't even scream and fell straight to the ground. Precision lightning strike. Raise the thunder on the target's head and can be released continuously. Sizzle. Sizzle. Swish. Robb sat on a chair, looking expressionlessly at all the mercenaries who had not taken off their leather armor, with a golden light flashing on his hand. Thunderbolts appeared out of nowhere in the air, hitting all the mercenaries who had not obeyed the military order again and again. Robb did not hold back. Their bodies were instantly charred black, their hair all stood up, and they fell to the ground without any life. After more than a dozen mercenaries fell, the Taroshis finally found the source of the thunder and the target of the thunder. Quick, quick, quick. The Wolf King of the North is angry, and he sent down thunder to punish those who disobey. Take off your armor quickly. Greenbeard saw his men and friends fall one after another, and he was anxious and screamed at all his strength. After more than 20 mercenaries fell in succession, Robb finally stopped. At this time, the mercenaries who had not yet taken off their leather armor finally felt the feeling of surviving a disaster. They cursed that the armor was difficult to take off and pulled frantically. "I have no mental strength left, otherwise I would have killed all these people." Robb sat on the chair, holding his chin with the hand that had just cast the prayer spell, looking bored. His indifference frightened Greenbeard below. This Majesty was indeed a bit scary. With a wave of his hand, he easily took away more than 20 lives, and he still had such an indifferent expression. Greenbeard thought that his future life would be to serve this king, and he couldn't help feeling sad. "Fight." Robb uttered a word. The moment they received the order, the wolf riders who had been silent as water suddenly broke out. Before the Tarosh mercenaries could react, they pounced on them like wolves. The wolf riders were originally strong soldiers and brave generals selected by Robb from various armies in the north. There were also many noble heirs who had started various battlefield combat training since childhood. In addition to the baptism of 2 perilous battles, they had already completed their transformation. They were silent, looking at the enemy with firm eyes. All they could think of were the scenes when Robb trained them. In such an encounter, the team with better teamwork could win the final victory. They spontaneously formed small teams, sometimes dispersed to block, sometimes merged together to bully the few with the majority, and concentrated to knock down a small number of mercenaries to the ground, and in the end no one on their side was seriously injured. In less than 20 minutes, all the Taroshi mercenaries were knocked to the ground, their faces covered with blood, and they fell to the ground groaning. The wolf riders stood in the camp, looking down at the opponents they had knocked down. If there were mercenaries who were knocked down and still cursed, someone would immediately surround them and beat them up until they shut up or were beaten to the point where they had no ability to speak. Your Majesty, please forgive them. Greenbeard looked at Robb nervously. If they keep fighting, one of them will die. Robb glanced at Greenbeard, and that look clearly did not contain any emotion, but it made Greenbeard feel cold all over, and he dared not continue to speak. Then, he heard another faint word, which made his hands and feet even colder. If I remember correctly, you are surrendered soldiers. Do you think you can come and go as you please? Chapter 35 Wolf Cavalry Organization. Your Majesty, we. Greenbeard was speechless, but he actually had some hope in his heart. Robb had been dealing with the matter of being crowned king these days, so he mixed these Taroshi mercenaries with the wolf riders directly, so that they blurred their identities. We are mercenaries who cut down the Lannister flag and switched to the Stark family. Now we are the mercenaries of the Stark family, not prisoners. Robb found it funny to see that all the mercenaries here had this idea. Maybe other lords would turn a blind eye, and some people would even think that the mercenaries' ideas were correct. But Robb didn't think so. You were enemies at first, and then you surrendered, so you are surrendered generals. Since you are surrendered generals, I have the power to deal with you. In the continent of Westeros, any idea is acceptable, but power is never based on legal principles, but on strength. Robb's current strength and power determine that he can deal with this group of mercenaries in any way he wants. You are the plasticine in my hands. I can knead and play with you however I want. If you don't accept it, you can try to reason with me. However, my reason may be much greater than yours. Strength is power. Wake them up. They must memorize what I say next before tonight. After Robb gave the order to the wolf riders, they quickly found buckets of cold water and poured them on the heads of the mercenaries. The cold stimulation quickly made them regain their sanity. First, from now on, you are not mercenaries, but my wolf riders. Second, ask the seniors around you and understand clearly what my orders mean in the battlefield and the barracks. After saying this, Robb didn't care about the mercenaries lying on the ground. Oh no, whether the wolf riders could remember it was no longer a matter for a king to worry about. His subordinates would help him with this matter. What he had to do was to manage the system and regulations of the team. Little John, Greenbeard, you divide these people into teams of 10, 4 wolf riders from the north and 6 wolf riders from Tarosh. Give me the list after you're done. Determine the military ranks. A team of 10 will have a captain and a vice captain. The captain will be chosen by them, and the vice captain will be appointed by the captain. Every 10 teams of 10 will be integrated into 100. The team will have a centurion and 2 deputies. I will personally select the candidates from the 10 deputies. You two will each be responsible for 100. After the team is organized, bring the qualified people to see me. The number of wolf riders does not need to be too large. Robb plans to stop recruiting when the team reaches 1000. However, the division and discipline of the entire team must be in the best state possible. It took 2 hours for Robb to finally meet many candidates for centurions. After some investigation, Robb selected several centurions and deputies. The candidates for centurions are basically nobles from the north, and Robb knows them best. Little John, Edgar Stark, Daisy Mormont, the heir of Maggie of Bear Island, Clay Severn. Only Greenbeard is a centurion from Taroshi. Among the centurion lieutenants, the ratio of Taroshi and northerners is not much different. Robb pays attention to bravery and selects those who have performed well in the fight just now. Robb looked at several centurions. Your fathers are the earls I rely on most. I hope that you can also show the bravery of your fathers in the wolf cavalry team. Offer loyalty to his majesty. Long live the north. Several people said in unison, which made Greenbeard, who was not clear about the slogan, a little embarrassed. Robb took out a few notes. You must control your soldiers. This is the training schedule I arranged for you. You must maintain discipline during training time and strictly follow orders. The 5 centurions took a glance and found that in addition to basic physical training, there were also cultural studies, including numerology, astronomy, and geography. What are these things for? Although puzzled, they did not raise any opinions. Just do what His Majesty asks. Robb thought about this training plan for a long time and finally decided to adopt a modern military management method with an execution level between university military training and formal troops. In addition, the captain system is an evolution of the squad leader system. In the future, Robb will also organize some team evaluations to create competition within them and form a positive stimulus. Robb continued to improve the formation of the wolf cavalry. Tell the people below that the soldiers from the north can leave the wolf cavalry after serving me for 1 year, or they can choose to continue serving me for another year. If they are willing to stay with me forever, I allow them to swear allegiance to me. As for the Terishes, considering their identity, they must serve me for 3 years before they can leave, and after that they will be treated the same as the soldiers from the north. Those who run away before the deadline will be beheaded like deserters from the Night's Watch. Greenbeard quickly half knelt on the ground. Thank you for your kindness. Robb waved his hand. Okay, pack up. We'll set off immediately. Robb's goal this time was to go to Luan City, but on the way he would clear out some bandits and robbers roaming in the Riverlands as training for the wolf cavalry. Greenbeard stepped forward, looking embarrassed. Your Majesty, some people are seriously injured and may not be able to leave immediately. Robb waved his hand, indicating that he understood. Robb stood up and walked to the middle of the wolf cavalry who had been numbered, and all eyes were on him. Leaning down, Robb's left hand emitted a gentle but extremely bright golden light. 2 circular halos formed by mysterious runes appeared at Robb's feet, flowing slowly and spreading outward quickly. Around Robb, golden spots of light appeared like tiny meteors, circling and wandering. Then the dreamlike scene was quietly broken, but everyone present could feel as if there was a warm air flowing along their torso. Robb stood up, as if nothing had happened. But the wolf riders were surprised to find something different from before. My wound has healed. I'm not bleeding anymore. My arm can move again. Miracle. Long live. King's recovery can include the surrounding friendly characters and greatly restore health. This is a prayer spell that consumes a lot of energy. Robb had already exhausted his mental power from killing people before, and he had enough mental power to perform it after recovering for a while. Although the old men and the wolf riders had seen Robb perform miracles several times, it was the first time for the newcomers to see it. The shock they felt was incomparable. In such a feudal era, a person can heal hundreds of people with one move. This is exactly what they think of as a god. From this moment on, countless Taroshi people have worshipped Robb as a god in their hearts. If a person does things, has abilities, and looks like the god they imagine, then he is a god. Long live the King of the North. Long live the King of the North. In the Wolf Riders camp, the shouts were extremely consistent this time. Chapter 36 Meeting at King's Landing. King's Landing, in the magnificent palace. Lord Titus Lakewood wore a simple armor with a silver dry tree carved on it, crows circling beside it, and a gorgeous cloak made of crow feathers on the outside. He was tall and thin, so when he looked at Joffrey on the throne and Cersei behind him, he only needed to raise his head slightly, without looking up. This made him hold his head high and chest out, and the whole person looked open and powerful. Joffrey felt disgusted when he saw him. Damn rebel, I will never agree to any conditions of that rebel. One day I will take off his head and hang it on the tip of a gun like his father for flies and crows to eat. Lord Titus Lakewood didn't even look at Joffrey. He knew that it was not this false emperor who was in charge of King's Landing now. He looked at Cersei, trying to see what this regent woman was thinking. His Majesty ascended the throne as the King of the North, and this move will certainly anger the two Lannisters. I just hope that Cersei can be as deep in love with Jaime Lannister as His Majesty Robb said. Lakewood felt a little uneasy, but he didn't show anything on his face. His mind echoed the words that Robb had told him when he set out. Never let your enemies know what you are thinking. Seeing that Titus Lakewood had no intention of paying attention to him, Joffrey was furious. How dare you disrespect the king, the hound, kill him. Sir Sandor Clegane, nicknamed the Hound, was huge in height and was one of the bravest warriors on the continent. He received the order and walked towards Titus Lakewood with heavy steps. 1, 2, 3. Here it comes. There was no panic on Titus Lakewood's face until his neck was grabbed by the Hound and the countdown in his heart ended. At the same time, he heard the expected voice. Cersei stopped him. Wait, let's hear what the false emperor in the north wants to say. Cersei couldn't let Joffrey kill Lord Lakewood, otherwise it would be tantamount to declaring Robb the negotiations broken down, and Jaime would never come back. The Hound looked at Joffrey, who hesitated for a moment, but still followed his mother's wishes. Cough cough cough. Lord Titus Lakewood coughed twice to relieve the discomfort caused by the Hound. He bowed gracefully to Joffrey and Cersei, a wise choice. Then he looked around, scanning everyone in the hall with sharp eyes, the Minister of Intelligence, the Grand Maester, the Chancellor of Finance. Some people looked at him, some lowered their heads subconsciously, but no matter how they behaved, Earl Lakewood began his speech. You should all know that my king is invincible. Now that my king occupies Riverrun, it will only take 2 days for the army to reach the Golden Tooth. Most of the territories in the Westeros are in my sight, and in just a few days, the nobles in the Westeros will surrender to my king's iron hoof. Lord Tywin is still guarding Harrenhal, but if he dares to step out of Harrenhal, my king and Lord Robos will chop off his head directly. In the south, Lord Renly has assembled 100,000 people, has proclaimed himself king, and will arrive in King's Landing soon. Titus Lakewood's words echoed in the hall, and many people looked at each other. Some of them were still in the dark, and some knew the news well. Joffrey's face changed drastically. He didn't know some news yet, such as Renly's claim to the throne. He looked at his mother, hoping that she could tell him that all this was fake. However, before Cersei could speak, Lord Lakewood roared unexpectedly. Joffrey, you wanted to kill me just now? Do you think I'd be scared? In Riverrun, I only had 3,000 men, and the Kingslayer had more than 15,000. They built siege towers and transported catapults overnight. I didn't know when I would die. Maybe the next second, the Kingslayer's team would break through the city gate to take my head. After going through such torture, do you think I would still be afraid of your threats? Just because of this little dog that can't even get on the table for dinner? You can kill me and let me have my head hanging on the tip of a spear like the old Duke, but Earl Lakewood's eyes became fierce, pointing at Joffrey, and his whole body burst into cruelty. I swear, my king will definitely avenge me. He will break through the gates of King's Landing and slaughter any enemy who blocks his way. He will catch you like he caught the Kingslayer, chop off every piece of your torso, tear off every piece of your skin, and then hang you on King's Landing for everyone who passes by to admire. If you don't believe it, you can try it. Kill me, right here. Kill me, now. Come on. Joffrey was so frightened that he jumped up from the Iron Throne. He was terrified when he thought of the scene described. He was terrified, he was trembling, and he was screaming, how dare you talk to me like that? Kill him, kill him, kill him. But no one took action. He was like a mad patient, screaming alone. Cersei hurried forward, hugged her child, and tried to comfort him. Her eyes looked at Lord Lakewood, full of anger. Don't kill him, cut off his hands and feet. Lord Lakewood still stood upright. You won't do that, Queen Mother. If you want the Kingslayer to lose all his hands and feet now, you can try it. Cersei's eyes changed. Now, you mean Jaime is in King's Landing? Of course. Otherwise, how can I show my king's sincerity? Lord Lakewood asked his servants to carry out a box. Cersei did not stop him and let the box open. She ran to the box and looked inside. The Kingslayer Jaime was inside. He was thinner and his whole body was covered with a faint red halo. Jaime curled up in the box. It was a miracle that he didn't die after all the running. At this moment, he was trying to open his eyes and see Cersei clearly. Cersei's face turned from joy to anger. She looked at Lord Lakewood and ordered the guards around her, kill him. Jaime had already arrived at King's Landing alive. Cersei didn't care about anything else. Going back on her words was commonplace for her, not to mention that she hadn't reached any agreement with Robb yet. No, don't. Jaime's weak voice came out. Cersei saw her lover's appearance, and her heart was already boiling with anger. She insisted on killing Lord Lakewood. I'm poisoned, and only he has the antidote. Jaime raised his hand and weakly showed his current state. A large piece of red substance appeared on his palm, which looked like rotten meat, and like a holy flower, revealing weirdness. Cersei's face changed drastically. Thanks to Diogen Kinksunzi for the monthly ticket. Chapter 37, Prison Cell or Guest Room. Cersei hesitated for a moment, but immediately regained her angry expression. How dare you do such a despicable thing? The antidote must be on him, and you can find it by killing him. If you want your brother to die, just do this. They dared to send my brother here. They must have thought about the current situation. At this moment, a cynical voice came from outside the hall of King's Landing. A short dwarf with a funny walk walked in. He ignored the strange looks of the people around him and walked straight to the box. Seeing the weak Jaime, a sad expression appeared on his face. Forgive me, brother. Although I love you, if you want our situations to be reversed, I would rather die. The little devil Tyrion joked to Jaime in the box, and Jaime inside squeezed out a weak smile. He finally saw his brother and lover again, just like a dream. Cersei looked at the imp, her disgust evident in her words. Aren't you at father's place? Why are you here? The imp jumped onto a chair and spread her hands. What a pity. I wanted to kiss your face to disgust you, but I didn't expect you to be standing. As for why I came, it's because of the stupid things you did. Tyrion Lannister took out a letter of appointment from his arms. It was a letter of appointment written by the current hand of the king, Lord Tywin, appointing the imp to temporarily serve as the prime minister of the kingdom. This Lord Titus Lakewood had already met with my father before he came. My father roughly agreed to his request, but it's up to you to decide in the end. I'm just watching. The little devil sat on the chair and looked at Lord Lakewood with interest. I didn't expect you to put my brother in the box. My father and I were deceived by you. His Majesty Robb is really bold to do this. Joffrey yelled. He is not a king. He is a false emperor. Titus Lakewood corrected seriously. My king has no intention of fighting for the continent of Westeros. He is a king, but not an emperor. Jaime struggled to stand up with the help of Cersei. He looked at Cersei and said apologetically, before I came, Robb and I made an oath that, whether you can reach an agreement or not, I will release his two sisters. Don't blame me. If you don't agree, I will secretly let them go. Cersei looked at Jaime. She knew he was such a person. Although others called him the Kingslayer and thought he had no knightly honor, she always knew that Jaime was such a person. Moreover, when she saw the imp, Cersei understood what her father meant. She had to agree to Robb's request. This deal was definitely a good deal for the Lannister family. Jaime and the two daughters of the Stark family? Even if they were exchanged for the 10 daughters of the Stark family, it would not be a loss. So he must have other requests. Cersei looked at Lakewood. Okay, tell me the request of the master behind you. What does he want? In order to give me Jaime's antidote. Lakewood said loudly. First, the two sisters of my king must be released and allowed to return safely to White Harbor from King's Landing by sea. And announce that Sansa's engagement with Joffrey Baratheon is officially cancelled. Cersei could fully accept this request. Joffrey was very angry. He wanted to kill Robb, but he was powerless. Second, return Lord Ned's remains immediately. We will bury him in the crypt of Winterfell as Lord Ned wishes, so that he and his brothers and sisters can rest in peace underground. The remains of the guards who died with him in King's Landing must also be returned. Joffrey was a little unhappy. To him, he had lost an interesting toy. Third, Lord Ned's Great Ward Ice must be sent to Riverrun and handed over to my king. Fourth, Lord Tywin releases our knights and lords captured in the Battle of the Green Fork. After he does so, my king will immediately release all the hostages held in the Battle of the Whispering Wood and Riverrun. The little devil found a glass of wine and drank it. Lord Lakewood had already agreed with Tywin on this point, and now he just came to inform the lords of King's Landing. Finally, King Joffrey and the Queen Regent must announce to the nation that they will give up their rule over the North and the Three Rivers. From now on, our country will no longer have any connection with them, but will be a free and independent kingdom, just as it was in ancient times. Our territory includes all the Stark fiefs north of the Neck, as well as the area where the Trident and its tributaries flow, from the Golden Tooth in the west to the Mountains of the Moon in the east. Although Lakewood's last request was not unexpected, it still shocked everyone. It was like you knew a bad news a long time ago, but it never happened, and finally it really happened in front of you. Cersei was so angry that her face turned pale, and Joffrey was even more furious. Damn it. Damn it. I will never agree to it. I will kill him. I will kill him. King Joffrey. Lord Lakewood was not afraid at all, and retorted loudly, these are all the conditions of my king. If you accept, my king will bring peace to King's Landing. If you don't accept, King's Landing will be the next Whispering Wood. Seeing Joffrey frightened again, Lord Lakewood felt an inexplicable sense of pleasure in his heart, and Robb's words to him came to his mind again. Negotiation is a competition of forces behind the scenes. If you can't get it on the battlefield, you can't get anything at the negotiation table, but now I have won it on the battlefield, and the rest depends on you. Cersei looked at Lord Lakewood. We will not agree to the last request. Then when Lord Renly leads an army of 100,000 to attack King's Landing, Lord Tywin will find that his army is trapped in Harrenhal by our king. Cersei sneered, you want to form an alliance with Renly? Don't forget, Renly also declared himself king. All kings have only one request, and that is surrender. Renly will never agree to your request. Lakewood stepped forward and did not give in. That is not a question for those whose heads are already hanging on the city wall to think about. Cersei was speechless and said with difficulty, we still have Dawn. Lord Lakewood laughed out loud. The Dawn who wants the Lannister family to die. The hall of King's Landing was silent, and no one could refute Lakewood's words. Sir James, you still have one day to think about it, but my king is not a patient man. You must make a decision as soon as possible. Earl Lakewood looked at the people with bad faces, bowed slightly, and said politely, now please take me to where I live. Whether it is a prison cell or a guest room in the castle, I'm free to stay. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 38 The Tragedy of the Village. The crows flew from afar, bringing the message people wanted. The Riverlands, the area between Riverrun and Oakhall. Robb led the wolf cavalry team and was slowly advancing. He did not go directly to the Riverrun city. According to the intelligence of the Blackfish, Robb decided to go south first to find Tywin's army that was wreaking havoc in the Riverlands. Tywin Lannister was a cunning opponent. He led the main force to huddle in Harrenhal, and his nobles killed people wantonly in the Riverlands. He did this to make Robb lead his men to Harrenhal to fight him, relying on the unique geographical advantages of Harrenhal to defeat Robb. Cunning fox, but unfortunately, no matter how cunning the fox is, it is no match for the hunter, and can only hide in the cave and tremble. When Robb was thinking this, Little John rode up with a letter in his hand. Little John's face was filled with excitement. Your Majesty, Lord Lakewood's raven flew back, and there is a result in King's Landing. Tearing open the envelope, Robb first checked whether Lord Lakewood had delivered the message according to the code. In order to ensure the accuracy of the information, Robb and Lakewood agreed on a secret code. By checking whether the third letter of each letter was deliberately misspelled and altered, they could determine whether Lord Lakewood was threatened. After seeing that the letter had the agreed code, Robb felt a little relieved. In the letter, Lord Lakewood said that, although the Lannister family was somewhat dissatisfied with the conditions proposed by Robb, they finally met Robb's requirements. Everyone knows that this is only a temporary delaying tactic. When King's Landing stabilizes, it will certainly not continue to recognize the current independence of the North, and the war will still break out. But now everyone is looking for a balance in the chaotic situation, and the Lannister family must compromise. Sansa will be escorted to White Harbor, the city of the northern vassal, along with her father's ashes by Earl Lakewood, and then the nobles of the north will send her back to Winterfell. Arya is missing, and King's Landing can't hand her over. This is not unexpected to me. Once the deal is completed, use this excuse to rob the lords of the Westerlands. Father's Great's Wardice will be sent back to Riverrun soon. It is a clan sword of the Stark family, and has symbolic significance. More importantly, ice is made of Valyrian steel. As the most luxurious steel in Westeros, Valyrian steel is a magical material that is said to be able to cause fatal damage to the White Walkers outside the wall. In fact, For Robb, it doesn't matter whether Valyrian steel can cause damage to the White Walkers. They are just undead. He has 9 ways to make them fall into eternal sleep. 9. What Robb is most concerned about is whether this magical material can amplify his spells. His Kalia spells and swordsmanship have never had many opportunities to appear, and a large part of the reason is that there is no suitable spell catalyst, and the consumption of use is far greater than prayer. It seems that Earl Lakewood has done a good job. When he comes back, I can consider leaving him one of my ministers. After Robb finished reading the letter, a ball of fire suddenly appeared in his hand and burned it up, leaving a little residue to drift away with the wind. Letting Jaime go directly was beyond the expectations of many people, but Robb had a backup plan. He planted the seeds of Scarlet corruption in Jaime. In fact, there is no antidote at all, because that little Scarlet corruption is not fatal at all. As time goes by, the corruption will gradually shrink, but it will not disappear. The Scarlet corruption will always leave a little trace of corruption on Jaime, so that Robb can understand Jaime's movements through the induction of mysticism. Although Jaime has returned to King's Landing, Robb has always controlled him. In fact, this matter was Jaime's initiative. If I go back, my father and Cersei may not keep their promise. They may continue to imprison your 2 sisters, so you should take some precautions on me. I don't want to break my promise because of an accident. Robb smiled at the time, praising Jaime for being a real knight. But Jaime thought too much. Robb had already planted the Scarlet corruption in him, and he was doing something unnecessary. After the affairs of King's Landing were dealt with, Robb had put his mind at ease, and his mood was much better. Your Majesty, Oak Hall is 5 miles ahead. I heard that Lord Tywin's men are wandering around here and looting villages, but it seems that there is a force fighting them. Little John rode his horse to Robb, holding a letter from Sir Blackfish in his hand, reporting the current situation to Robb. Robb nodded. Send more people out to see the situation around. Just then, another centurion, Daisy Mormont, arrived on horseback. As a rare female heir to the nobility, she was tall, 6 feet tall, even a little taller than Robb, who was still growing. She looked angry. Your Majesty, the village ahead has been looted. The miserable scene. When Robb led his men to the village, the whole village had turned into ruins and burned to a scorched earth. The abandoned naked corpses were left outside with no one to deal with them. The scavenging wild dogs and crows saw someone coming and fled. The women were all dismembered horribly. Judging from their appearance, they had obviously suffered inhuman treatment before being tortured and killed. This is a cruel battlefield. The wolf riders who saw this scene all showed crazy expressions on their faces. Lannister. Damn it. Robb had a blank expression on his face, and no one knew that his heart was already filled with anger. It seems that our opponent Tywin is a person who likes to spread terror. In this case, I think he should like this taste. As a king, I swear here that I will capture Tywin alive, and then return to that old man everything that the people of this village have suffered, 10-fold, no, 100-fold. I hope he won't die so early while being tortured. Robb ordered the corpses to be gathered and piled together. Then he stretched out his palm, and a ball of bright red flame appeared in it. Robb gently pushed it upwards, and the flame left Robb's palm, gradually expanded and grew in the air, and finally formed a huge fireball. Watching the fireball devour the corpse, Robb continued to advance with the wolf riders. Most of the Riverlands are still in the hands of Tywin and his lackeys, and the other side wants to force him into a decisive battle in this way. Robb knew that the biggest taboo in fighting is to perform on a stage chosen by the other side, so Robb would not fight him. Since he likes to fight guerrilla warfare, then I will play with him. Let's see how long this old dog can play with me. Just thinking about it, Centurion Ed Stark brought intelligence. Your Majesty, there are 2 forces fighting ahead. Judging from the flags, one of them is a noble and a Lannister. Thanks to Quality Inspector Zangwenny and JJC 1221 for their monthly tickets. Thanks to the Tau that can be said is not the Tau that can be said, but the Shura Tau for the reward. Chapter 39, The God of No Response. Kill. What a lucky guy. They're in big trouble now that they've met these masterless bastards. 2 groups of people were fighting at the edge of the woods near Oak Hall. The group holding the black and white boar banner had the upper hand. They launched a surprise attack on the group in the woods. They had the advantage in numbers and equipment, and soon defeated the other side. Sir Burton Craighall rode his horse excitedly, charging back and forth on the battlefield, and soldiers fell one after another under his iron hooves. He is the younger brother of Earl Craighall of the Westerlands, and is currently burning, killing, and looting in the Riverlands under the orders of Lord Tywin. Burton Craighall has burned 5 villages, and dozens of people have died under his sword. What he loves to hear most is the screams of women being raped in public. Of course, the sound of them being dismembered is also beautiful. The beauty of the two is comparable. Originally, Sir Burton Craighall was going to continue to plunder the next village, but he found an unexpected surprise in the woods. There was a group of armed troops hiding in the woods. He originally thought they were some bandits, but they turned out to be the wanted criminals of Lord Tywin, the Brotherhood without banners. On the battlefield, a man dressed in a red robe and looking like a monk was running around, summoning brothers who could still fight. He ran and shouted, "No, we can't defeat them, let's retreat." A soldier shouted, "Damn it, they killed Boss Beric, I want to avenge Boss Beric." The red-robed monk grabbed the soldier and said, "Go back first, and think of a way. You will only die if you go there now. How can you avenge Beric? But where should we retreat to? They are all around us. Retreat to Oak Hall. The lady should allow us to take refuge with her. Their territory has been looted by the Lannisters, and we have a common enemy." The soldier looked sad. "There is no point in going to Oak Hall. Their people have been taken to Riverrun to fight. The mountain knows we are here, and he will bring people to Oak Hall immediately." The red-robed monk was furious. "Fuck the mountain. Have you forgotten our oath? We are fighting for the farmers in the Riverlands. You are going to die now. Are you going to break your oath?" Encouraged by the red-robed monk, many soldiers regained their fighting spirit. They quickly united together and prepared to find the weak points of the enemy to break out. The red monk saw that several soldiers were still pulling a corpse. "Retreat is important. Why are you still carrying the corpse?" The soldiers wiped the blood off their faces. "This is a body of Boss Beric. We can't leave him here for the enemy to destroy." The red monk was stunned for a moment. "Okay, you go in the middle." The members of the Brotherhood without banners began to gather their companions as much as possible and began to retreat. Sir Burton Craighall noticed this small group of teams. This was one of the few teams that could still be gathered. When defeated, the more teams that could be gathered, the more they had to be dispersed. As long as the other side escaped, they would never pose a threat. Go, kill them. Capture their leader, and Lord Tywin's bounty will be enough for us to have fun in the best courtyard of King's Landing for a day. Dozens of cavalry followed their boss and rushed towards the small group led by the red monk. The red monk roared in despair, "Damn it." When the cavalry chased the scattered infantry, it was already a completely different level of battle. The cavalry had absolute crushing power. In a blink of an eye, Burton Cray led his men into the fleeing team. Seeing his teammates fall one after another, the red-robed monk's eyes were instantly bloodshot. He slapped his sword over and over again. "Damn it, burn it. Why not burn it? Lord of Light, why can't I get your response? Why can't I see the future in the flames like everyone else, and add flames to my sword? Why am I the only one who can't do anything?" The red-robed monk fell into despair, not because the battle was irreversible and his warriors fell one after another, but because his faith that had always existed completely collapsed at this moment. He had always been confused as to why he could not show the miracles of the Lord of Light. Now it was a matter of life and death, and he still didn't feel any response from the Lord. "Damn it. Is everything going to end? My lord, what are you daydreaming about? Retreat. You guys go. I'll cover the rear. We can't leave Lord Berry's body on the battlefield. Come here." The pulling and shouting of his companions pulled the red monk out of his confusion and made him see the current situation clearly. Although the warriors were dispersed by Burton Craig's cavalry, many soldiers still gathered here. Some were for escape, and some for honor. There is still a chance. I can't give up. If God doesn't respond, I have to rely on myself. At the critical moment, the instinct of survival infected each other, and a little energy burst out, making the people of the Brotherhood without banners more and more courageous. After seeing this scene, the people who were originally fleeing in all directions actually took the initiative to approach. The red monk staggered to his feet, struggled to identify the direction, and then led his men to rush towards the direction of Oak Hall. On both sides of the team, many spearmen took the initiative to stand up, holding their spears high, ready to fight against the cavalry that might rush over at any time and protect the teammates in the middle from harm. But they were too few in number, and the cavalry still had bows and arrows to use, so they fell very quickly. Damn it, where are the archers? Shoot them. Someone in the team couldn't stand it anymore and picked up a bow and arrow to shoot at the cavalry, because it was basically impossible to hit a moving target while running. Everyone just shot randomly to scare the enemy. My lord, there are too many cavalry. I know. Damn it, I'm thinking of a way. The red monk hit the weapon hard. He wanted to catch fire with the weapon so that he could scare off the horses and make them dare not chase him anymore. But no matter what he did, the weapon had no reaction. Damn it, how did those witches do it? Why can't I do it? The red monk was so angry that he cursed. Mad. Lord, answer me. Abu. At this moment, a wolf howled suddenly outside the battlefield. Then the people of the Brotherhood without banners heard the thundering sound of horses running, and they looked in the direction of the sound in a daze. A team holding the dire wolf flag appeared on the outskirts of the forest. After a short reorganization, they silently charged towards Burton Craig's team. A young man with blue eyes and reddish brown hair took the lead, followed by a huge dire wolf. All the enemies on his way were no match for him, and the dire wolf would bite to death anyone who tried to attack him. In just a few breaths, the young man rushed in front of the red-robed monk. The red-robed monk looked at the young man, and the dazzling sunlight made it difficult for him to see his appearance. But his voice was very powerful, and even in the battlefield, where the sound of fighting was deafening, he could clearly hear what the young man said. What happened to your god? Chapter 40 Blood debt must be repaid with blood. The red monk Thoros came from Mir on the other side of the strait, and came to Westeros to spread the faith of the Lord of Light. During his time in Westeros, he experienced 3 kings. When the Mad King ruled, he tried to spread the teachings of the Lord of Light to the Mad King, but the king who was obsessed with fire believed in dragon flames, not some messy Lord of Light. This made the red monk Thoros confused, and began to doubt himself. Later, Robert Baratheon launched a rebellion and ascended the throne. The red monk Thoros' missionary target became Robert. Although Robert was not a good king, he was a good friend to Thoros. They often enjoyed wine and sex together, played together, and participated in battles together. Robert was also the first warrior to climb the walls of Pike. As for those rules and regulations, go to hell. It's a pity that Robert died. Then the king became Joffrey. The little kid didn't know anything, and he was protected by Queen Mother Cersei like a giant baby in a greenhouse, which was difficult to understand. During Joffrey's reign, Thoros the Red was no longer in favor, and the king's hand Ned sent him and Lord Beric to the Riverlands to capture the Mountain, who had committed many crimes. Just a few days after leaving the capital, the situation suddenly changed. Ned was imprisoned by Joffrey, and the king's hand became Lord Tywin. The sudden change made the identities of this group of people awkward, and the war soon broke out in the Riverlands, and they became rebels. Thoros the Red and Beric decided that Tywin would definitely regard them as enemies anyway, so they might as well stay here and help the civilians fight against the brutal Lannister army. So the Brotherhood without banners was born. It's a pity that the good times didn't last long. They suffered a heavy blow before they had experienced a few battles. If it weren't for the young man in front of him, I'm afraid I would have to die here. Thoros the Red breathed a sigh of relief. He looked around and saw that the team led by this young man was definitely the most elite. They were like ruthless monsters, fighting silently on the battlefield, but they made the enemy fall into the deepest fear. After just one round of charge, these cavalrymen scattered Sir Burton Craig Hall's troops, and the following battles showed extremely high coordination and discipline. In less than half an hour, the shouting on the battlefield gradually subsided, leaving only some painful and weak groans. The red monk Thoros saw Sir Burton Craig Hall and his lackeys tied up and thrown in front of Robb. But there was no panic on their faces. According to the customary rules of the nobles, they would not kill the nobles after catching them, but would go to the other party's family to ask for ransom. The personal safety of the nobles is completely incomparable with that of ordinary civilians. Robb looked at them expressionlessly. Did you burn the village ahead? Burton Clegane raised his head. I did. I killed those children. As for those women, hey, there's nothing good about farm girls, but although they are ugly, they can be used. Seeing him like this, Robb found it a little funny. Even the Kingslayer Jaime would maintain basic courtesy after being captured by him. This nobleman who came out of nowhere dared to talk to him like this. Robb didn't say anything. Little John on the side was furious. He rushed up and hit him hard in the face with the hilt of his sword. Damn it, watch your words. The one in front of you is the King of the North, the Guardian of the Riverlands, the young wolf lord of the Stark family who has been passed down for thousands of years, and the blood wolf that the enemy fears the most on the battlefield. You should call him His Majesty. Greenbeard on the side was a little dumbfounded, and he felt sorry in his heart. Why couldn't he think of such a flattering word? Sir Burton Craighall spat. What king in the north? His Majesty? Lord Tywin will come sooner or later, and the battlefield is not a place for you little kids to play house. Robb didn't feel anything about what he said. In his mind was everything that happened to the village before. Such a beautiful village was burned down, and no one was left. They were all my people, my property, my money. So Robb looked at his wolf riders and said, those who have been loyal to the Dreadfort, come out. 5 or 6 riders came out. They used to work under Oz Bolton. Can you skin people? The old skinner should have taught you this, right? They nodded. Yes, but the skills are not as good as Lord Bolton. Maybe people will die halfway through skinning. Robb said lightly, it's okay, just skin people. I will treat him. Hearing this horrible conversation, Sir Burton Craighall's heart stopped immediately, and his body couldn't help but tremble. He began to be afraid. No. What do you want to do? You want to kill me? You can't do this. Little John stepped forward and hit him again, breaking his teeth. I said to call you Your Majesty. Sir Burton Craighall hastily corrected. Ah, yes, Your Majesty. Please forgive me. Robb looked at him curiously. Why can't I do this? Poor Sir Burton Craighall now had a lisp in his speech, and he burst into tears. Your Majesty, I beg you, don't do that. My family is rich. They will be willing to pay the ransom, and they will definitely compensate you for the loss of 5 villages. Robb's eyes changed. 5? Burton Craighall was stunned for a moment, and quickly changed his words. One by one. I just said nonsense. I remembered it wrong. Robb spread his hands. What a pity. If you can listen to the requests of those you killed, maybe I will listen to your opinion. Ah. Sir Burton Craighall was a little confused. Did those untouchables beg for mercy from him? He didn't know at all. It was too chaotic at the time. He was only concerned about his own happiness. He only listened to the screams and didn't hear the begging for mercy. Besides, even if they begged for mercy, how could he have the time to remember what the untouchables said? Robb didn't want to pay attention to this scum anymore. He waved to the knights of the Dreadfort. Begin. After skinning, tie them to the spears and raise them up. Feed them regularly and give them water. I'm here to ensure that they can live for a week. The riders following Burton Craighall turned pale. They heard their fate in this word. Without the slightest hesitation, they all crawled to the ground, wailing loudly, tears and sweat flowing freely, asking Robb for forgiveness. Your Majesty, please spare us. We are just following orders. Don't do that. Please kill me directly. Your Majesty, I'm willing to be your slave. Please spare me. Robb was a little annoyed by these voices. It's so noisy. Cut off their tongues. The Red Monk Thoros looked at the violent things happening in front of him and didn't know what to say. What kind of existence has he fallen into? Thanks to Parmooks for the monthly ticket and reward, and thanks to 160,820,154,544,772 for the monthly ticket. Chapter 41 Mysterious Funeral. The Red Monk Thoros trembled as he listened to the screams in his ears, half knelt on the ground and saluted Robb. Your Majesty, I'm Thoros, the Red Monk from the... I'm very grateful for your life-saving grace. They call you the King of the North. May I ask if your father is Lord Ned Stark? Thoros asked cautiously. Robb had some impression of the group of Red Monks. They were ascetics serving the Lord of Light, who was one of the most active gods in the world. In any case, he really appeared. The red monk in front of him seemed to be a relatively important person, but Robb didn't remember it clearly. He didn't have a deep impression of anyone who was not a major character. Robb raised his hand and motioned him to stand up and speak. "You are members of the Brotherhood without banners, right?" "Yes, your majesty. We came to capture the mountain under the order of the hand of the king, Lord Ned Stark, but we didn't expect that halfway." The red monk Thoros breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. After clarifying this relationship, the cruel king of the north in front of him should not let himself and others suffer such inhuman treatment. Robb nodded. "I have heard about your deeds. Sir Blackfish said that you will try your best to protect farmers and innocent people from the Lannister thugs. You have done a good job and are true knights." The red monk quickly expressed his honor. "It is our highest honor to be praised by the king of the north. Since you have already confronted the Lannister family, why not join my team? I'm going to find Ser Edgemere, who is gathering soldiers and supplies in the Riverlands. You can go with us. It will be safer." Faced with Robb's invitation, the red monk knew that he had no capital to refuse, and he didn't want to refuse. Not only was he afraid that he would be skinned and hung on a spear, he knew that he and others could not avenge Beric alone, and even survival would become a problem. Joining the army of the north was a good choice. "We are very willing, your majesty, but please give us some time to bury Lord Beric and the dead warriors." Robb kindly gave them some time. After all, Beric died for his own territory, and burying this warrior was a matter of course. Although the red monk Thoros has never felt the response of the Lord of Light, the education he received since childhood still made him hold a funeral for Beric according to the Lord of Light's sacrificial method. Everything was kept simple on the battlefield. The red monk asked his men to find branches and flammable materials, and then put Lord Beric and other brothers who died in the battle on them. After doing all this, the red monk Thoros began to silently recite the Lord of Light's prayer. Looking at the actions of the red monk, Greenbeard and the wolf riders from Tirosh felt very cordial. This is the most common ceremony in their hometown. In another continent, the belief in the Lord of Light is widely spread, but on the continent of Westeros, only the 7 gods and the old gods have widespread beliefs. So Little John and a group of wolf riders in the north looked disdainful. Heresy. On the continent of Westeros, the people of the north and the children of the forest still believe in the old gods, and they sneer at other beliefs. This is also the reason why the north has always been incompatible with other regions. The red monk Thoros finally finished his last prayer. The night is long and dark, and everywhere is dangerous. He held a torch in his hand, wanting to ignite all the dry materials and burn the bodies. At this moment, the sky suddenly darkened. Countless dark clouds appeared from nowhere, covering the sky above Robb's side, looking like a dark cloud over the city. A beam of sunlight penetrated through the dark clouds and fell on the red monk Thoros, who was chanting the prayer. This strange phenomenon attracted everyone's attention, and the wolf riders and the members of the Brotherhood subconsciously looked up. However, the wolf riders did not speak, but just silently protected Robb and vaguely surrounded the members of the Brotherhood and the red monk Thoros. The members of the Brotherhood did not pay attention to the battlefield at all. They were whispering and discussing the strange phenomenon. "What's going on? A miracle? It should be. Didn't Thoros always say that he is a believer in God and knows magic? He doesn't know any magic. He only has some tricks. I saw him smear wildfire on the sword to make it burn. Then how do you explain what's going on now? The sky is covered with dark clouds, and only he is illuminated by the Sunday. How do I know?" The red-robed monk was also a little confused. He didn't understand what was going on. He had performed such a ritual countless times before, but it never happened. He looked up at the direction where the sun was shining. The next second, his pupils lost focus instantly, as if he had lost consciousness, and the torch in his hand fell to the ground. The red-robed monk's eyeballs rolled up and down until they disappeared completely, leaving only empty white eye sockets. The whole person's aura changed with it, and his movements became gentle, as if he would tear his body apart with a little force. Elegant and dangerous. This is the most prominent feeling that the red-robed monk gives people now. The red-robed monk shook his head slightly and looked at Robb with his pupil-less eye sockets. The wolf riders felt something was wrong. They didn't know what was going on, but the red-robed monk in front of them was completely different from before. He seemed like a frenzied beast that remained quiet, which made people feel extremely oppressive. Some people may have only heard of it before, but now everyone felt it personally. Coercion. The red-robed monk just standing there made people want to kneel down and worship him. The members of the Brotherhood without banners could no longer suppress their instincts. One after another, they knelt on the ground and recited the most pious prayers. The Wolf Riders also began to have this instinct, but they tried their best to stay sober and fight against it. In such a strong oppression and confrontation, they all raised their spears in their hands and pointed them at the red-robed monk to relieve the pressure. Just when someone couldn't resist and wanted to rush up to shoot a hole in the red-robed monk, who was pretending to be a ghost, they heard a familiar voice. Robb rode on his horse and looked down at the red-robed monk. "Stop pointing your spears at him. We should be happy that a friend has come from afar, and no matter who he is, we must maintain the most basic courtesy." After Robb finished speaking, all the Wolf Riders felt their bodies lighten. They no longer felt oppressed as before, and they returned to normal. They felt relieved, put away their spears, and recalled the situation with lingering fear. What kind of monster is this red-robed monk? Exclamation mark. Robb rode forward alone with a blank expression and came to the red-robed monk. "So, who are you?" Chapter 40 To the King of Light departs. Light. The red-robed monk uttered a simple word. Hearing this word, the air in the forest seemed to be quiet. The Wolf Riders and the members of the Brotherhood without banners all opened their eyes wide. They could see that the red-robed monk's mental state was not right, but they didn't expect him to dare to say that he was the light. What is light? In this world, only the King of Light in another continent would use such a honorific name. If he is not crazy, then it means that the current red-robed monk is actually the legendary King of Light. Is this the legendary descent of God? Exclamation mark. They really wanted out what the red-robed monk said, thinking that he is just crazy. But the pressure that the red-robed monk exuded just now, which wanted people to worship and kneel down, to kiss the soil under his feet, made everyone believe that he is the King of Light. Little John and the centurions of the North were a little panicked at this time. Although the North did not believe in the King of Light, the other party was a real god. Like the old gods they believed in, and the 7 gods believed in other regions, they are all the most noble and mysterious existences. They actually just pointed fingers at the religious ceremony of the descent of a god. For the first time, Little John felt a little overwhelmed. In the past, he thought everything was simple, and he just needed to obey the command of His Majesty Robb. But now he was facing the Lord of Light who had descended to the world. Little John and several centurions from the north looked at each other and saw each other's thoughts in each other's eyes. If the Lord of Light blames us, we must protect His Majesty's safety even if we die. They didn't know the Lord of Light's ability and didn't understand what the Lord of Light could do now that he had descended on the red monk, but they knew that he was a god. They all knew that they could never believe in God's mercy or question God's power. Robb looked down at the red monk, and the horse under him had already collapsed, as if it would kneel to the ground in the next second. The dire Wolf Grey Wind bared his teeth and stood between the two of them, with a fierce light in his eyes and a tense body. As long as Robb gave an order, Grey Wind would rush up immediately. Robb narrowed his eyes. "Oh, it turned out to be a divine descent. So you are here to find me?" The red monk nodded. "The light guided me to see you." "See me? Then what?" "But there is no trace of you in the flames." Robb smiled. "Do you like being a riddler?" Seeing that the red monk was silent, Robb's hand touched his sword, and his eyes became sharp. "I hate you people who don't talk properly the most." A black and red breath quietly appeared at Robb's wrist. They intertwined and swam quickly. The taste of death and fate flowed out of Robb's breath and rushed straight to the torso of the red monk. The red monk, who called himself the King of Light, showed an expression on his face for the first time, looking at Robb with doubt and fear. What is this?" Robb smiled. "If you don't talk to me properly again, I will let you know what this thing is." The red monk's face was alternately confused, angry, and fearful. It seemed that he had encountered such a situation for the first time. As an orthodox god, the inspiration of the Lord of Light has reached the pinnacle. He felt incredible that the black and red aura on the wrist of this human was actually emitting a dangerous aura that made his origin tremble. What on earth is that? Robb saw that the other party was in an emotional state and had not spoken yet, but just stood in front of him, a little unhappy. "You are blocking my way." After saying this, the black and red aura on Robb's body suddenly surged, and the whole body exuded a terrifying aura. The wolf riders were very close to Robb. At this moment, they really felt the breath of death. The feeling of terror swept through their bodies, as if they had experienced death once. The Lord of Light, who was descended by God on the red-robed monk, suddenly ignited a flame. Although the flame was very weak, everyone who saw this flame could feel its strength. This fire contained an explosive breath and concealed the vitality of life. Just one look, no one would doubt, this flame will never go out. But when the black aura on Robb's body spread to the front of the red-robed monk, the fire became weak. The wild wind blew gently, and the flames on the red monk were completely extinguished, leaving no trace. It was as if the vitality of this flame had encountered death. The red monk's body could not bear it, and he took a step back. Robb did not force him too much, and retracted his breath. Looking at the red monk, Robb said lightly, "Now you should remember, don't block my way in the future. Also, when you talk to me, you must speak well." Robb did not say the remaining sentence, "Otherwise, you will see your destined death in the flames." The red monk lowered his head, and was silent for a moment. Little John and the people of the north looked at each other. They couldn't believe their eyes. The existence that claimed to be a god also had to retreat and give in front of his majesty. The gods who were originally thought to be high above, now seemed to be just like that in the eyes of his majesty. What power does his majesty have? Long live his majesty. Long live the king of the north. Everyone was reveling in their hearts, but no one made a sound. This is a game between his majesty and the gods, and there is no need for them to be noticed. But everyone was in a frenzy. Especially the wolf riders born into Roshi. They saw the faith they had grown up with, but were frightened by their current monarch. Under the effect of the convert's fanaticism, they were more loyal than the wolf riders in the north. At this moment, they were willing to give anything for Robb. Seeing that Robb was about to show an impatient expression, the red monk finally spoke, his tone a little hurried. "The dragon flame on the continent has revived, allowing me to gain the ability to walk on the earth. But the ice in the north is about to sweep over, and no one can stop the winter wave. I will follow the guidance of the light to see you, and the flame will guide the future path." Robb was a little speechless. You can never expect the charlatan to speak well. If he hadn't sensed the other party's intention to cooperate, he would have slashed him with a sword that contained a destined death. The riddle god deserves death. Before Robb could continue to ask, the red monk Thoros' body trembled violently, and the mysterious and noble aura gradually disappeared. Everything in the forest seemed to come alive again. I don't know when the wind and birds disappeared, and I don't know when they will appear again. The red monk Thoros' eyes gradually returned to normal, and he looked like he had just woken up from a dream. The Lord of Light left. The red monk Thoros had no memory of what happened just now. What happened just now? Robb put away his sword and said calmly, "Nothing. It seems that your god is afraid of me." Thanks to the king's dream secret realm, Pamuk's Dusk, October 2nd brother gets married. King Kiu Mountain is mine. Deep hidden attack and fame. Reading in dreams. Chasers on the stairs of time. Book friends. 201811101130215997 for their monthly tickets. There are so many monthly tickets at the end of the month. Chapter 43, Warlock Saurus. The red-robed monk Thoros was a little confused. He had completely lost his memory of what had just happened, and didn't know what had happened. He saw the members of the Brotherhood without banners kowtow to him, and the wolf riders looked at him with complicated eyes. What happened? What did his majesty Robb mean by that? The god I believe in is the Lord of Light. Does God still fear this kind of emotion? Why is it so hot? What is this? Just when the red-robed monk Thoros was still in a state of confusion, screams brought everyone's thoughts back to reality. When the gods descended just now, the torch in Thoros' hand fell to the ground and ignited the haystack where the corpses were placed, which was now burning fiercely. And the screams came from those corpses. Those corpses actually moved. And they could still scream! Exclamation mark. Under the gaze of everyone, Earl Beric Dondarrion was reborn in the flames, but he looked a little embarrassed at the moment, and he was screaming and screaming because of the smoke and fire just after his resurrection. Robb snapped his fingers, and the horse under him jumped its hooves. Then a stream of white icy air spread forward from under the horse's feet, extinguishing the flames on Earl Beric Dondarrion. Beric Dondarrion stopped screaming, and he looked around in confusion, looking at each other with a red-robed monk Thoros who was also confused. Didn't I just die? I resurrected Beric Dondarrion? The Lord of Light didn't abandon me? Exclamation mark. Seeing the two people's appearance, Robb kindly said, "It seems that you don't know what happened yet. Let your men explain it to you." After the members of the Brotherhood without banners explained what happened just now to the two people, the two finally got a clue, and at the same time, became more confused and felt incredible. The Lord of Light descended from the sky, the test between His Majesty Robb and the Lord of Light. These sounded like fairy tales from ancient times. But seeing Beric Dondarrion's resurrection and the words of so many people, they had to believe it. After seeing that the two people knew what happened, Robb also began to think about the current situation. Although some of the words the Lord of Light said were very riddles, some were easy to guess. The dragon flame resurgence should refer to the fact that the Dragon Queen, who was still on another continent, hatched 3 dragons, and the dragon's flame revived the Lord of Light's abilities. Winter is coming is easier to understand, as it refers to the Night King outside the wall. Judging from what the Lord of Light expressed, does he want to join forces with me to deal with the Night King? Having allies is a good thing, but choosing who to be your ally is a technical job. If you make a bad choice, you may encounter a traitor who backstabs you. Since the Lord of Light is the first one to come to the door, let's investigate first. As for the two people in front of him, Robb has also thought about how to arrange them. First, Robb looked at the resurrected man. Lord Beric Dondarrion, you are still loyal to King Robert after the great changes in the capital. I admire your loyalty. Are you willing to join me and fight against the Lannister army? If you don't want to, I will send someone to escort you back. Lord Beric Dondarrion hesitated. He was the Lord of Black Harbor City, and his territory was in Dawn, one of the few areas that was not involved in the war. If he said he wanted to go back now, he could immediately stay away from these wars and live a peaceful life. But those were not what he wanted. He could have left long ago, but when he saw what the residents of the Riverlands suffered in the war, he could not allow himself to leave. Philanthropy, loyalty, and compassion. The spirit of chivalry has always shone in his heart. Beric Dondarrion made up his mind and looked at Robb. I want to stay and fight for the innocent people in the Riverlands. Robb admired this warrior very much. My uncle Sir Edgemure is active nearby. You can bring your people with us. There is a place for you with Sir Edgemure. Beric Dondarrion nodded in agreement. He didn't care who he worked under. What he cared about was whether he could save innocent people. Robb looked at the Red Monk Thoros again. This man had the experience of divine descent and was the intermediary between the Lord of Light and himself. He must be kept by his side. You should know what happened just now. My team is in need of warlocks. You can join the Wolf Riders. As you wish, Your Majesty. The Red Monk Thoros did not refuse. After he met Robb, the Lord of Light descended upon him and gave him the ability to revive the dead. The meaning of these phenomena could not be clearer. The Lord of Light made him a missionary of His Majesty Robb and served Robb with the miracles given to him by God. The matter of divine descent came to an end for the time being. After Robb dealt with all the matters, he continued to lead the team to wander around the Riverlands, looking for the lackers sent by Tywin. Because of the addition of members of the Brotherhood without banners, the speed of the Wolf Riders slowed down a bit, but the efficiency of clearing the ruins of the villages along the way was greatly improved. Every time he passed a village, Robb's anger grew unconsciously. Robb didn't know how many people were in the team sent by Tywin to plunder, but he had a clear understanding of their cruelty. These people are simply beasts. Even in this era, there is a qualitative gap between the status of nobles and civilians, and no normal noble would think that civilians should be treated like this. As long as it was a village visited by Tywin's army, no one was left alive. From their corpses, it can be seen that they had suffered inhuman torture before their death. The food and livestock in the village were either robbed or burned. Civilians hung on poles to dry naturally. children torn apart alive. The appearance of the woman was even more unbearable to look at, and no one with good intentions wanted to know what happened. Robb was getting angrier and angrier. Bring out that Burton Crake Hall and let the horses drag them away. When we rest, we will hang them on the spears. Let them see the crime they have committed. Burton Crake Hall was no longer in shape. He had lost his skin, and all his blood vessels and muscle fibers were exposed. Not to mention touching him, even the sun's rays, made him feel so painful. But what made him most crazy was that he should have died long ago. Who could live so long after such severe torture? But every time he was about to die, a golden light would inexplicably appear on his body, repairing his injuries and maintaining his life. Is this the legendary healing spell? But is this how the healing spell works? Why would a spell that symbolizes mercy harm oneself like a demon? The knights under his command were the same as him, the only difference being that they had lost their tongues and could not say a word. They were now living a life worse than death, and their hearts were filled with regret. But Sir Burton Crake Hall soon got some comfort, because more and more people were experiencing the same thing as him. Chapter 44 Tywin's Weapons. Ser Amory Lorch and his men were also captured by that brat, and most of the men we sent out were lost. In Harrenhal, two brothers of the Lannister family were discussing the current war situation. Ser Kevan Lannister was Tywin Lannister's younger brother and the second commander of the Lannister army. He held a piece of intelligence in his hand and reported with a frown, and the group of mercenaries from Koha were also wiped out. That brat was even more cruel than we thought. He learned the skills of the Bolton family and skinned all the captives and hung them on the ends of spears. The most terrifying thing is that I don't know what kind of witchcraft he used to make those poor people endure more than 10 days of torture before they died. Now many nobles are no longer willing to go out to plunder. They are afraid of Robb. Tywin listened to the report with a normal expression. He held the golden wine glass, cut off a piece of roast suckling pig skin with a knife, and put it in his mouth to chew carefully. Poor Ser Amory Lorch. I still remember his brave performance when I broke into King's Landing and asked him to kill the Mad King's granddaughter. He stabbed a little girl more than 30 times. Tywin said so, but everyone could see that he didn't care much about the plight of those people. His son had returned, and the others were just chess pieces in his war. Kevan Lannister continued to report, the war in the Riverlands has been spread to Luan City. The area of God's Eye Lake under our control is already a sea of fire. Livestock and supplies have been looted. Tywin swallowed the roast suckling pig skin. The piece he was eating was looted from the Earl of Lakewood in Wildraven Castle. Kevan was a little annoyed, but recently, Robb has been wandering around the Riverlands with a team of unknown number. All the teams that met him were captured, and no one escaped. Tywin took a sip of wine to relieve his greasiness. I underestimated this kid. I didn't expect him to be able to restrain his mind and not come to Harrenhal to fight me, but to do something like leading the army in person. 300 years ago, the black-hearted King Harren plundered half of the resources of Westeros and built Harrenhal in the Riverlands. Workers, gold, stones, and thousands of years of weirwood were transported in succession. Tens of thousands of slaves died of exhaustion, and it took 40 years to build it. Therefore, this fortress is the tallest and strongest fortress in Westeros. The 5 towers cover the sky and the city walls are impregnable. Even if there are many enemies, it is impossible to break through easily. It's a pity that King Harren met Aegon the Conqueror and his 3 dragons at that time. Although Aegon the Conqueror couldn't break the city wall, the surging dragon flames suffocated the people inside. Since then, the whole family disappeared from the world forever. Every family that obtained Harrenhal afterwards would encounter misfortune, and it became a dark and cursed place. Although Harrenhal is an unfortunate city, for the Lannister army occupying Harrenhal, it is the most suitable place in the entire continent to fight a decisive battle with the Stark army. So Tywin kept sending small-scale teams to plunder the territory of the Riverlands, forcing Robb to make a decision. Tywin's strategic planning is almost unmatched in the world. If Robb doesn't care about himself, the nobles of the Riverlands will lose patience and loyalty. Even if Robb lets the army plunder the Westerlands, the losses recovered cannot make up for the laxity of people's hearts, because they can only rob the Westerlands of supplies, but cannot save their relatives and friends in the Riverlands. And in the Westerlands, Tywin has already prepared a backup plan. says Stafford Lannister, Tywin's cousin and the brother of his deceased wife. He is quietly gathering an army near Casterly Rock, and as long as the northern army invades, they will delay the other side. At this time, Tywin can take the initiative to attack and eat up the old flayed army, which will seriously hurt the vitality of the north. If Robb ignores everything and comes to Harrenhal to fight with him, it will be even better. This is what Tywin wants most. Facing Robb's third way to break the deadlock, Tywin also began to think about how to deal with it. His fingers tapped the table rhythmically, brewing a conspiracy, making the atmosphere in the room even more depressing. Now is the time to test our endurance. We don't have much time. We must get rid of this troublesome little devil as soon as possible. Tywin finally made up his mind. Robb's move shows that the nobles in the Riverlands can no longer sit still. They want to protect their own territory and wealth. What we have to do is to hold on to this string and continue to plunder the Riverlands. As long as one noble leads Reverin to defend his own territory, the team in the Riverlands will be completely dispersed. Ser Kevan Lannister reminded, our people are also very scared. Robb's methods are too horrifying. No one is willing to go. Tywin smiled contemptuously. Oh, a group of vultures. They almost knelt down and begged me to let them go to plunder, but now they are weak. But it's useless for them to go. They are no match for Robb. Ser Kevan Lannister guessed his brother's thoughts. Ser Gregor Clegane, this is a good choice. He may be able to capture the little devil alive. Even if he is defeated, he will not be unable to escape back alone, leaving us in the dark. Yes, it's the mountain. Where is he now? He just plundered Derry, but there are not many people in the city. It is said that the brat Robb forced most of the nobles to take refuge in Reverin. Tywin frowned slightly. Let the mountain make a bigger noise, and you send people to support the mountain, and wait until the brat Robb and the mountain collide before taking action. Ser Gregor Clegane is famous for his brutality. At the same time, he is tall and burly. Just seeing his appearance can scare many people to tears. It is really the most suitable to use him to do such a thing. Ser Kevan Lannister went out to arrange the task, and old Tywin stayed in the study to think. Tywin was very confident in the fighting ability of the mountain. Even if he didn't capture Robb alive, he could repel the opponent's team. In this way, the nobles under his command would have the courage to rob again. In addition, some other backup plans must be prepared. Tywin thought about it, wrote a few letters, and secretly sent them to the Earls, stationed in the west, as well as to the Luan city in the north in the direction of Roose Bolton's army. After writing, Tywin rubbed his temples tiredly. The current situation reminded him of the scene of the crusade against the Mad King many years ago. There were rebels everywhere, and the continent of Westeros was in a sea of fire. What needs to be figured out now is, who is your enemy, and who is your friend? Tywin murmured to himself, just wait and see. A mere kid from the Stark family dares to call himself king. Thank you all for your monthly votes. Because there are too many votes, I can't thank them one by one. The author would like to thank them all here. I was beaten up when I went out just now. Please vote for me. /vertical bar. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 45, Dangerous Demon Mountain. On a high hill in the Riverlands, in the woods called Noble Heart, two teams gathered at the foot of the hill, one holding the Dire Alf banner, the other holding the Silver Trout banner with red and blue stripes. Robb Stark and his uncle Sir Edgemure Tully finally met again after a long separation. I have gathered a lot of refugees and soldiers in the Riverlands, more than 5,000 in total. Although this is good news, Edgemure still has a gloomy look on his face. The mountain has set off a bloody storm in the Riverlands, and many civilians have fled to the wilderness. After these people joined my team, not only did they have no combat effectiveness, but they also dragged down the soldiers who had fought. I doubt that they will be considered a great achievement if they don't break up their formation after going to the battlefield, and these people are also consuming our food. If ordinary farmers go to the battlefield without training, it will only have side effects. Not only can they not help at all, but their crying and running away will also shake the morale of the army. So although Edgemere has 5,000 men, only 100 trained and experienced enemies can chase them all the way to the northern wall. If they can survive. Robb sat at the head of the tent and smiled slightly after hearing his uncle's complaints. He casually threw a secret letter to Edgemere, who took it and opened it. He found that it was a map of the Riverlands with some routes marked on it. Edgemere didn't understand and looked at Robb with some doubts. Robb looked outside the tent. The old dog Tywin released a lot of puppies. They robbed a lot of supplies and transported them to King's Landing and Tyrenhal. These are the routes for transporting supplies that I have found out. You can take your men to rob them. Robb added, use the people of the Brotherhood without banners that I brought to attack them. You should train the peasants in your hands first. This information came very easily. Robb's punishment was unprecedentedly horrific. Whether it was Lannister's men or his own people, they would feel uncomfortable when they saw so many horrible scenes for the first time. The 5 or 6 captured nobles and their knights could neither live nor die, and even wailing became a luxury. Under such harsh punishment, they answered whatever Robb asked. In fact, they were already unconscious and only answered subconsciously, not knowing what they were saying. Such punishment is not something that any human can bear. After all, it is too exaggerated that they cannot faint or die no matter how much pain they suffer. Robb, your majesty, is it better to kill those people outside directly? If we torture the nobles like this, others may. Edgemere hesitated, but still added the word your majesty. Now there are only him and his nephew in the tent. He originally wanted to call Robb's name directly to show the closeness between relatives, but the horrific scenes outside made him subconsciously add the word your majesty. This is an invisible authoritative oppression. Robb shook his head. Killing them directly is too easy for them. Even if the nobles are superior to the commoners, they cannot be slaughtered in such a cruel way. Besides, the Riverlands have pledged allegiance to me. The people of the Riverlands are my people. Since they dare to take action against my people, it means that they have thought about the consequences. Robb never minded being a tyrant. Sometimes the political schemes are not that complicated. You can just win over a group and suppress a group. You should give enough benefits to your own people and be cruel to your enemies. Robb retained such a simple political concept. Edgemere sighed helplessly and prepared to discuss another matter with Robb. The mountain is very active in the Riverlands now. Many nobles' territories have been looted by him, so they hope you can let them go back to their own territories and protect their property. Edgemere has also been very troubled these days. After seeing that the crisis of Riverrun has been resolved, many nobles in the Riverlands can't wait to return to their own territories. Although some of them are eager to attack the Westerlands and take back all the lost things, the nobles in the Riverlands as a whole still prefer to protect themselves. This is not surprising. If the nobles of the Riverlands were a warlike group as a whole, they would not have been plundered by the Westerlands and the Stormlands in turn in history. Robb nodded immediately and agreed, of course. Edgemere did not react and subconsciously continued to persuade. They lost a lot when they were in the Golden Tooth City. Now, what? You agree? Yes, of course they can go back. I still need them to manage their own territory well and provide me with supplies. But not now. They can go back after I have almost cleared out Lannister's minions in the Riverlands. Edgemere was surprised. You will face the mountain head on. It's too dangerous. The mountain's current reputation can scare every child in the Riverlands, but no adult will joke with a child like this. They all know that this joke will become a reality at any time. It is rumored that the defenders of the Riverlands will be scared to pee their pants as soon as they see the mountain, and the mountain will tear apart anyone who dares to stop him. It is even said that his horse is not an ordinary beast, but a demon. Otherwise, there is no way to explain how the horse can carry the 2.45 meter tall mountain and his heavy armor. The mountain's men are as cruel as the mountain. They like to amputate limbs, and cruelty flows in their blood. Women had better pray that they have the courage to commit suicide before being captured, otherwise they will definitely regret it. Robb knows that the mountain is the only card Tywin can use in the current situation. Recently, he has encountered the Lannister army less and less frequently, indicating that they are beginning to shrink. But the mountain's actions are more and more ostentatious, just like a fat pheasant roasting itself tenderly and juicy, and the intention of seducing himself is clear. Robb said to his uncle, when I catch the mountain, the old guy Tywin will probably retract his balls completely, and then those nobles who want to go back can go back. Edmure is still worried, but that's the mountain. You are the king of the north. How can you do such a dangerous thing? He knows that Robb is very strong, but anything can happen on the battlefield. If something unexpected happened to Robb, Edmure didn't dare to think about it any further. Not only would he not be able to face Catelyn, he also didn't dare to imagine what terrible disaster the Riverlands would suffer. Robb smiled and said, my dear uncle, the mountain may be dangerous to you, but to me, there doesn't seem to be anything dangerous in this world. Thanks to Lady Zoo for the reward. Chapter 46. The mountain arrives. Stonehenge in the Riverlands. This territory belongs to the Bracken family, but their lord, Lord Janos Bracken, is stationed in Riverrun with most of his troops. Now, only the Earl's illegitimate son Harry Rivers and his nephew Henry Bracken are left in Stonehenge. Lord Janos has 3 wives and 5 daughters, but no son. So his illegitimate son and nephew have the opportunity to inherit his title, which has led to the two of them always being at odds. At this time, Harry Rivers gathered with the Bracken family with a secret letter, written by the Earl. He looked a little proud. My father sent me a letter. He told us to stay in Stonehenge, to prevent the minions of Lannister from coming to rob us. Henry Bracken on the side snorted coldly, but the King of the North ordered us to take refuge in Riverrun. We are loyal to him, and should listen to him. Harry Rivers had beautiful blonde hair and a good-looking face, which was different from the brown hair of the men of the Bracken family, so there were always rumors that he was not actually the son of Earl Bracken. But Earl Bracken liked this illegitimate child very much, because he was not only handsome, but also had good martial arts. This preference made Henry even more unhappy, so he challenged this illegitimate child everywhere. Harry Rivers retorted unyieldingly, father said that Earl Lakewood is now trusted by the King of the North. If the King of the North is close to our mortal enemy, we cannot fully trust him. Harry Rivers knew that Henry Bracken was only opposing him for the sake of opposing him. He had never met the King of the North, so what loyalty was there? He was just jealous that his father only wrote to him and didn't write anything to his nephew. So he used the Lakewood family's affairs to refute. It is unknown how long the feud between the Bracken family of Stonehenge City and the Lakewood family of Wildraven City has lasted. The rumor that Harry Rivers is not Earl Lakewood's biological son is Earl Lakewood's favorite topic to discuss. Now Earl Lakewood not only led people to defend Riverrun, but also helped the King of the North redeem his father's ashes and sister. Earl Janos Bracken immediately felt the crisis. The King of the North is close to his mortal enemy. This is a dangerous signal. It will be dangerous if the two join forces to deal with him. He also began to selectively execute Robb's orders. For example, this time Robb ordered all nobles to take their families to Riverrun for temporary refuge, but Lord Janos Bracken was not very willing. If there were no troops in his territory, wouldn't the Lannister army just plunder at will? That would be his own loss, and the King of the North who owns the North and the Riverlands certainly wouldn't care. Wildraven Castle in Lakewood was burned down because no one was stationed there. Now if he could hold on to the territory, the Bracken family would surpass the Lakewood family in strength. So he wrote a letter to his sons, ordering them to defend Stonehenge. At the same time, he also made a request to Sir Edmure, hoping to let him go back to defend his homeland. Harry Rivers shook the letter in his hand. This is my father's order. No matter what you think, we have to stay here. Henry Bracken frowned. You shouldn't call him father, you should call him sir. You are Rivers, not Bracken. The Riverlands are famous for their numerous water systems, so the illegitimate children here use Rivers as their surname. Just like the snow can be seen everywhere in the north, so the illegitimate children are all called Snow. The name Rivers is a derogatory name, especially when Henry Bracken emphasizes it. You. Harry Rivers was furious. Do you want to duel with me? We can go out now. Henry Bracken smiled contemptuously. Who are you? Do you want to attack a noble? Just when the situation was tense, the woman of the Bracken family stood up. Stop arguing. I'm almost deafened by hearing you guys arguing about this every day. That's right, you're still 2 men. Now you should gather the army and prepare to defend the city, not fight with your family. Fight your own family? You're really brave. There are so many Lannister lackeys outside, but you point your swords at your own people. Among the 5 daughters of Earl Bracken, Beth Bracken was the most opinionated one. She spoke first, and then the 4 sisters responded to each other to ease the relationship between the two. Harry Rivers and Henry Bracken were blushing at what their sisters said, and they didn't think about the duel for a while. Harry Rivers sighed and gave in first. Beth is right. Whether we go to Reverin to find my father or defend Stonehenge, the most important thing now is to gather the army and intensify training. Henry Bracken stopped arguing and said in a deep voice, I'll go to gather the soldiers. After Henry went out, Beth saw that Harry Rivers was still a little depressed, so she stepped forward to comfort him. Ignore his nonsense. No matter what, you are our family. We are connected by blood, and no one can deny that. I know, I don't blame him, Before Harry Rivers could finish his words, the door was knocked open by Henry Bracken. His face was full of fear, his eyes were wide open, and he even stuttered when he spoke. Here, they are coming. Beth was a little dissatisfied with her cousin's panic. What are they coming? Are the Lannister army coming? Even if they come, what's so scary? You and Henriga will stop them together. Here comes Gregor Clegane. Gregor Clegane is more famous for his other name, the Mountain. Now no one said that Henry Bracken's actions were reckless. The terror of the Mountain had already spread throughout the Riverlands, and no one would question his cruelty. The room suddenly became quiet, and a trace of fear flashed across Harry Rivers' face, and then he forced himself to calm down. How many people are there? Henry panted. I don't know. I saw a team in the distance with the flag of the Clegane family, so I ran to tell you. Seeing that the 2 men were silent, Beth stood up. What are you still standing there for? Send a raven and a messenger to deliver the message. Reverin is still a little far from us. We can't waste any more time. Harry Rivers suppressed the fear in his heart. No, we are on the plains. The raven flying to Reverin will be seen at a glance, and can be shot down with just 1 arrow. The messenger will also be tortured and interrogated. If the Mountain knows the situation in our city, what should we do? Are we just waiting to die here? The sudden appearance of the Mountain made all the members of the Bracken family lose their minds. They were frightened by the Mountain's fierce reputation and even completely lost the ability to think. Up to now, none of them knew how many people the Mountain brought here. No one thought about how to arrange fortifications to resist the Mountain. But this can't be blamed on them. Earl Janus Bracken is still in Reverin. He is the only commander of the Bracken family who has been on the battlefield. Both Harry Rivers and Henry Bracken have only participated in some night competitions. They know nothing about war. Harry Rivers gritted his teeth and said, the Mountain hasn't come close to us yet. Let's release the raven somewhere else, hoping that someone somewhere else in the river will see it and send a message to Reverin for help. Ravens have a relatively fixed flight route. If they fly directly to Reverin, the Mountain will definitely be ready to shoot down the raven along the way. Now we can only hope that the raven flying to other places can pass on the message. Good morning, dear readers. It's the beginning of August now. I have been writing for more than 20 days without realizing it. I feel quite emotional. At the beginning of the month, I would like to ask all the big brothers to vote for me, because I heard that there will be a lucky draw if the monthly votes for a book reach 1,000 in a month. I have never been exposed to these things before, so I hope that all the big brothers can satisfy me. To show my sincerity, if the monthly votes exceed 500 each month, I will add 2 more chapters that month, and if the monthly votes exceed 1,000, I will add 2 more chapters. Thank you for your support. Chapter 47. Where are the reinforcement? Outside Stonehenge, a team holding a yellow flag with 3 hounds embroidered on it is building a camp. It is said that the Clegane family was originally the dog trainer of the Lannister family. Because they saved the life of an old duke, they were granted a fief by the Lannister family and became a wealthy knight family. Today, Gregor Clegane is the head of the family. People call him a hypocritical knight, the angry dog of Lord Tywin. But no one can deny that there is no other knight in this kingdom who can arouse such terror among the enemies. Looking at the Stonehenge, which is so close, the Mountain did not rush to attack, but ordered the army to station first. However, his men were not idle, and each of them had his own errands to complete. The dwarf nicknamed Notapad is the most competent one among them. He is the soldier in the army responsible for interrogation and punishment of the Mountain. It is said that no one can remain silent in front of him, and the information he asked must be recorded in a notebook. At this time, his gorgeous clothes were covered with dried blood. He held a terrifying looking torture device in his hand, and had a hideous smile on his face. Opposite him was a villager whose name he did not know. His body was covered with blood, and he had long lost consciousness. Is there any gold hidden in the village? Where is the silver and jewels? Where is the stored food? Where is Lord Beric Dondarrion? Which villager helped him? What kind of flag did they hold? Where did they go? Is there any gold hidden in the village? Where is the silver and jewels? Where is Lord Beric Dondarrion? How many people are with him? Where did they go? Will you tell me? The Nottapod repeated what he said over and over again, never getting tired of it. Every time he repeated it, he would punish the poor man with a torture device in his hand. There was no intact part of the farmer's hands and feet. The flesh and blood were mixed into a mess, and it was impossible to tell which piece of meat belonged to which piece. Every time the villager was about to faint, the Nottapod would increase the intensity of the punishment and pour cold river water on him. Sitting aside and admiring, the Sweetmouth Trafe was a little puzzled. You've already asked what you wanted. Why are you torturing him like this? Rafe was nicknamed Sweetmouthed because he had a high-pitched voice, and this nickname came to him over time. The Nottapod put away the tool in his hand, with a satisfied expression on his face. This is to keep the feel for it, he explained. We are going to capture Stonehenge soon, and there are many nobles waiting for me to interrogate. No one can remain silent in front of me, right? I can't let this golden sign fall on my hands. Sweetmouth Raff also had a look of longing. I heard that the Bracken family is very good at giving birth to daughters, and they are all good looking. The Nottapod looked disgusted. Do you only have women in your mind? Isn't it the same for you? Don't you remember that when we passed by that tavern, Polliver fell in love with the daughter of the tavern owner, so we killed them all, and then did what we liked? The Nottapod complained. Yes, so later we had to roast the meat ourselves, and it was simply not something that people should eat. Sweetmouth Raff sneered. Yes, you make it sound like you didn't participate. You were massaging Lord Mountain's feet when he was doing it. Hey, I just don't want to be a loner. Woo woo woo. The two were talking and laughing, and suddenly the sound of a bugle came from outside. They were all very familiar with this sound. It was the horn that the mountain called his men to prepare for battle. Why is it so sudden? Didn't Lord Mountain tell us to wait a few days before attacking the city? Who knows? Maybe something has happened. The Nottapod and Sweetheart Raff looked at each other, dropped their things, put their armors in order, and ran in the direction of the mountain. Baby, wait until I come back before continuing. The Nottapod ran out of the tent and turned back, gently admonishing the captive tied to the chair. In the end, only the captured peasant was left in the room, and he could do nothing but tremble. Outside the stone-fenced city, the mountain's troops were in chaos at this time, and everyone was in a mess. The soldiers wore their armor crookedly, and struggled to organize into formations. The scene looked extremely chaotic. The stone-fenced city defenders not far away saw this scene clearly. Even those who had no military knowledge could know that this was the best time to take the initiative and defeat the enemy. The gates of Stonehenge City were tightly shut, and no one dared to come out, because at the front of the team, there was a giant who looked like a small mountain, wearing armor. Hurry up. Have you found Lord Mountain's armor? Send it over quickly, and help Lord Mountain put it on. Where's the sword? Where's Lord Mountain's sword? As one of the most subordinates of the mountain, the Nottapod also had a task, which was to help Lord Mountain put on his wartime armor. The mountain was 8 feet tall, about 2.5 meters tall, with broad shoulders and arms as thick as branches. Naturally, the weapons he used were very different from those of others. His armor was divided into 4 parts, which were worn by 4 of his confidants. There was also a 2-handed giant sword, which was as easy and carefree in his hands as an ordinary person using a 1-handed sword. After putting on his armor with the help of the Nottapod and Sweetmouth Raff, the mountain held a knight's gun in one hand and a 2-handed giant sword in the other, and said in a low voice, "Charge." The Nottapod and Sweetmouth Raff looked at each other strangely. Why are you in such a hurry? Charge without transporting siege equipment? In fact, many people were not ready, but Lord Mosshand spoke, so everyone had to ride on horses, take up weapons, and howl to attack Stonehenge. Kill. Kill. Mosshan led the way. He wore a flat-topped huge helmet, leaving only breathing holes for his mouth and nose, and a narrow hole next to his eyes for observation. The decoration on the top of the helmet was a stone fist pointing straight to the sky. He was wearing an incredibly heavy plate armor, which ordinary people could not even lift, let alone wear. Under such heavy protection, when a few arrows flew in front of him, Mosshan did not dodge at all, and those arrows were only bounced away. The defenders saw the terrifying huge figure approaching gradually, and everyone's face showed a desperate expression. The number of Mosshan's troops far exceeded that of the defenders of Stonehenge. Most of the elite were taken away by Earl Bracken. They were just some substitute soldiers with low combat effectiveness. After seeing the huge figure, they couldn't help but feel fear in their hearts and almost ran away. Only a few people could still keep their sanity and shoot arrows at the enemy. Henry Bracken came to the city wall in armor, and after seeing the low morale, he was very anxious. If the situation continued at this pace, let alone fighting, these people might just tie him and his sisters up and offer them to the mountain, who was rushing towards him. Attack. Don't be afraid. The mountain is also a human being. Think about your family in Stonehenge. We don't have the choice of surrendering. Think about the villages burned by the mountain. Would you like your wife and daughter to be treated like that? We can't be afraid. Fight for ourselves and our families. Reinforcement are on the way. As long as we hold on for a while, reinforcement will arrive, and we will be saved soon. Hearing this, Harry River, who had just climbed up the city wall, was a little surprised. He grabbed Henry Bracken's armor and whispered, "What reinforcement? Why don't I know?" Henry Bracken was furious. "How the hell do I know there are reinforcement? But if I don't say so, they will run away." Thank you readers for your monthly tickets. Chapter 48, Battle of Stonehenge. The transportation of siege equipment could not keep up with the mountain's bloodthirsty nature. When the mountain led his men to the bottom of the city wall, something embarrassing happened. The battlefield suddenly became very quiet. Ordinary arrows could not cause any damage to the mountain and his armor, and the powerful crossbows could not aim at the mountain standing under the city wall. The fixed mode crossbows could not adjust such a large angle. So the defenders on the city wall were attacking the team carrying siege equipment. The mountain looked around at his cavalry, and a sense of irritation rose in his heart. Lord Lannister originally asked him to besiege Stonehenge without attacking, but he sent an urgent report this morning asking him to attack decisively. The spies judged that the enemy had reinforcement coming soon. If the mountain did not quickly capture Stonehenge, he might be trapped on both sides, just like the defeated Battle of Riverrun. Being trapped on both sides, it was ridiculous. The mountain sneered at the spy's judgment. He looked at the defenders of Stonehenge, all of whom were scared by him, and were about to pee their pants. Could they still have the courage to go out of the city gate and fight him? But the orders of Lord Lannister must be obeyed. The mountain really had nothing to do on the battlefield, and the current situation was a bit strange to him, so he got off his horse and walked to the closed city gate. Boom. The mountain took a sledgehammer from his men and began to pound the city gate violently. Boom. Boom. Looking at the wooden city gate that was constantly being hit, a feeling of despair rose in the hearts of the defenders of Stonehenge City. Is this really the power that humans should have? Question mark? 7 gods, that monster is about to smash a bolt. Although the mountain couldn't break a city gate by himself, the city gate that kept cracking was like a line of defense in people's hearts. The mountain's actions were shocking and disintegrating them. When the mountain's men carried the ladder to the bottom of the city gate, the mountain's army cheered enthusiastically. Kill them. Quick. Hold the ladder and climb up. The daughters of the Bracken family, hehe. Don't dream. The Brackens are nobles. Only knights like Lord Mountain can touch them. You can just deal with the maids in the castle. The resistance of Stonehenge City was unexpectedly weak. They thought that this city would become a new piece of fat meat for them to enjoy. The morale of the mountain army was extremely high, and everyone's face was full of violent expressions. Greed and cruelty were the basic colors of the mountain army. The Nottapa took the lead and began to climb up the ladder. Although it was dangerous for the first warrior to climb to the top of the city, Lord Mountain would never be stingy with rewards. And looking at the resistance of the people in Stonehenge City, it didn't take any effort at all. Maybe after I climbed the city wall, they would put down their weapons and kneel down to beg for mercy. The weakness of the enemy army instead aroused the brutality of the mountain army. They rushed to the city wall like crazy. Hurry, don't let them come up. Stones. Smash them to death. Shoot arrows. Where's the sulfur? Where's the oil? Burn them to death. Think about your families. Push the ladder down. Harry River and Henry Bracken screamed on the wall. They were terrified. It seemed that only by shouting could they dispel their fear. They ran back and forth on the wall and immediately went up to help any soldiers who couldn't hold on. But their actions could not save the one-sided trend of the whole battle. Soon, a soldier wearing armor showed his head on the ladder on the wall. The defenders of Stonehenge were terrified. Several of them surrounded him and hit the soldier's head hard with the big stones in their hands, knocking him down. But soon another enemy appeared on the other side. The gap they just exposed gave the mountain's men an opportunity. The heavily armored soldiers howled and climbed up the wall. They looked like crazy and chopped anyone around them. 5 or 6 defenders of Stonehenge were scared away on the spot. The unprofessional side of Harry Rivers and Henry Bracken was revealed again. Although they were the first to lead the charge, there was no supervisor. The fleeing defenders had no obstacles along the way and fled directly back to the city. Seeing this, how could the defenders of Stonehenge City still have the heart to fight a bloody battle with the mountain's men? Just like dominoes, one fall immediately caused a chain reaction, and half of the defenders on the top of Stonehenge City collapsed in the blink of an eye. There were still defenders moving stones up there. When they saw the friendly troops running down in a panic, they were horrified. What's wrong? Can't we hold on? We can't hold on. They're all dead. Lord Harry and Lord Henry were beheaded by the mountain. When the defenders who were moving stones heard this, they threw the stones on the ground and prepared to run home to see if they could hide in the cave. Harry Rivers saw this mess and yelled in anger, "Damn, who said I'm dead? Come back. I'm not dead yet. Come back to guard the city gate." Henry Bracken saw more and more Lannisters on the wall and yelled in anger. So many people have only guarded for such a short time. Even if the mountain's people were to catch so many pigs, they couldn't catch them all. Seeing that the defeat was imminent and there was no way to save the situation, Harry grabbed Henry and said, "Let's go. Are we going to give up Stonehenge like this? Stop talking nonsense. We can't defend it if we stay here." When the mountain climbed up the wall, the defenders on the wall of Stonehenge completely collapsed. The mountain's body was so huge that he could block the sun just by standing in front of a person, and the oppressive feeling was almost suffocating. He wielded his spear and two-handed sword just like an ordinary person performing one-handed swordsmanship. Every time he swept, he could take away a large number of lives. He didn't even use any fighting skills. He just needed to repeatedly swing his weapons. Huge armor and exaggerated weapons that constantly harvest lives. The mountain is like a monster without feelings and emotions. Anyone who stands in his way will be torn to pieces. On the city wall, the mountain set off a bloody storm. Harry Rivers and Henry Bracken were also very scared. After seeing the complete collapse on the city wall, they had no intention of continuing to defend the city and returned to the core area of the castle. A few minutes after they left, the gate of Stonehenge was opened from the inside by the mountain's army. Almost all the people standing on the city wall were members of the mountain's army. The mountain's men showed ecstasy on their faces. They swarmed into Stonehenge and started their own carnival. The two stumbled, holding on to their already somewhat scattered armor, and met their sisters in a hidden room. Beth Bracken stood up excitedly when she saw them coming back. "You are back. Have you defeated the mountain? When will they attack the city again?" Henry Bracken panted. "We can't hold on any longer." "What?" Beth was incredulous. "You just started the battle less than an hour ago. You didn't see how terrifying the mountain is." There was a noisy sound outside, and the cries and screams were like waves in the lake, gradually spreading to every corner of Stonehenge. "Damn it, take them all." Beth's face changed drastically. She took out 5 small pills from her arms and stuffed them into her sister's pockets. "If you are caught, take them. Remember, don't get caught by them." "What is this, sister? What is this?" the youngest sister cried. She was frightened by the shouting outside. "When the time comes, just close your eyes and swallow it directly. It won't hurt you." After Beth finished speaking, she didn't have time to care about their emotions. She and her brothers and sisters retreated towards the back door of Stonehenge under the cover of a team of guards. Since Stonehenge could no longer be defended, they could only go to Reverin to find their father. But the path they used to walk every day became extremely crowded at this moment, with countless crying people crowding here. Men, women, old people, children. At the critical moment of life and death, no one cares about their status. They moved with difficulty behind the guards, as if they would soon see the dawn ahead. Hey, there are some well-dressed rich people here. Well done, Notipod. There are so many women. Come on, get more people to surround them. The sudden voice made the Bracken family pale. Chapter 49, The Name of Wolf Cavalry. You go first, I'll deal with them first. Henry Bracken and Harry Riverman said in unison, and rushed towards the Notipod with half of the guards. The Notipod didn't even look at them, and kept his eyes on Beth Bracken and others. Catch them, don't let those girls run away. The two groups of people fought together. Both sides were experienced warriors wearing sophisticated armor. For a while, no one could do anything to the other. However, the number of the Magic Mountain army in the city was increasing. Hearing the call from the Notipod, many soldiers surrounded him. Sweetmouth Raff was the first to arrive with his men. When he saw Beth and others struggling to move forward under the protection of the guards, his eyes widened. Gods of the Seven, what good things did you find? Quick, catch them. The Notipod was caught in a dilemma under the siege of Hendry and Harry, and cursed. Can't you see that I can't stand it anymore? You bastard with a human on your dio, come and help me. After the people of Sweetmouth Raff joined the battlefield, the situation immediately became one-sided. The guards of Stonehenge City were killed and retreated step by step, and finally they put up a desperate resistance with their backs against the city wall. Wow, what should we do now? A daughter of the Bracken family cried. It was the first time she saw so many wolf-like eyes. Beth gritted her teeth and looked at her sisters with red eyes. Take the medicine I gave you. If you are caught, take it. Henry Bracken complained. I have said long ago that we should obey the orders of the King of the North and go to Reverin to join our father. Otherwise we would not end up in the current situation. Harry Rivers had one arm cut off. Don't complain about those useless things. Kill a few more bastards first. The Bracken family fell into despair at this moment. They were determined to die. Beth held a dagger in her hand. If any sister did not have the courage to take the poison, she would help them get rid of it. Otherwise they would suffer more torture than death. When they fell into the hands of the mountain's men, the soldiers around her fell one after another, and the faces of the Bracken family were already splattered with blood. Medicine. Beth Bracken looked around and held the medicine in her hand tightly. Woo woo woo. Ding 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 ding. The sound of the women of the Bracken family crying and the sound of fine iron colliding in her ears was. The guards around him fell one by one, and finally, the guard closest to him also fell. Beth held the dagger tightly in her hand. She could no longer maintain her calmness on the surface, and was about to go crazy under the threat of death. Ha ha ha, look at these girls. The Notipod rushed out from a gap, and he stretched out his hand to grab the Bracken woman who was close at hand. The woman screamed. In the chaos, she had completely lost her mind. Her mind was blank, and she completely forgot about the medicine in her hand. Beth's hands trembled slightly. She wanted to kill her sister and avoid her humiliation. But that was her sister. No one could kill their relatives without changing their expressions. She raised the dagger and tried to move, but her body still couldn't move. Her dagger fell to the ground. She couldn't do it. I'm sorry. I'm too weak. I can't do it. Beth was almost about to collapse. Her tears covered her entire face. She didn't dare to look at her sister again. She knelt on the ground and covered her face and cried bitterly. The Notipod was excited. He reached out his hand to pull the woman, but the next second, an arrow shot over. Whoosh. The arrow accurately pierced through the Notipod's hand that was about to reach out and continued to fly forward after piercing through, nailing it firmly to the ground. Everyone looked in the direction where the arrow flew from. It was a cavalry team with a neat and solemn military appearance. Everyone's armor was very sophisticated. Although they were not heavy cavalry, the momentum they exuded was even better. The most eye-catching thing was the flag they held high. It was a flag with the appearance of a dire wolf. Wolf cavalry. It's wolf cavalry. Although Harry Rivers had been knocked to the ground, when he saw the flag, he still burst out with all his strength and roared hoarsely. Reinforcement are coming. It's His Majesty Robb's wolf cavalry. Everyone, come out quickly. Henry Bracken was already unable to lift the sword, but the cavalry team somehow gave him great courage and strength. He suddenly jumped up and killed the unprepared soldiers in front of him. If the Mountains Army and the people of the Riverlands represent terror, then the Wolf Riders represent legends. The Battle of the Whispering Wood, the Battle of Riverrun's Raid, and the legend of sweeping the Lannister army in the Riverlands. The Wolf Riders are invincible. If Robb, the King of the North, is a legendary Egon the Conqueror, then the Wolf Riders are the three dragons under the legendary Conqueror. Because the Wolf Riders are invincible, His Majesty Robb's reinforcement have arrived. They are the Wolf Riders. Come out and kill the enemy quickly. Long live His Majesty Robb. Long live the Wolf Riders. Long live Stonehenge. Long live His Majesty Robb. Long live the Wolf Riders. Long live Stonehenge. Led by Harry Rivers and Henry Bracken, the remaining dozen guards began to roar in unison. Then the soldiers who were still fighting in Stonehenge heard it, and they also began to roar, to dispel the fear in their hearts. The shouts soon spread throughout Stonehenge. After the Wolf Riders and their flags appeared, the whole city was in an uproar. After experiencing despair, the arrival of the Wolf Riders was like the first light of dawn, bringing hope. In the terrifying atmosphere of the death of the Mountain Army, this little hope brought the courage to fight to the death. Come out and fight. Find the flag of the Wolf Riders. Find the flag of His Majesty Robb, and unite together for Stonehenge City and His Majesty Robb. One of the Wolf Riders ran out alone. He had grey hair and looked to be in his 60s. He was first ever and free. He was experienced. After seeing the tragic situation in the city, he immediately realized that the defenders of Stonehenge City did not put up a decent resistance. So the first thing he had to do was to arouse the confidence of the defenders who were hiding. After hearing the roars of the defenders of Stonehenge City and the Wolf Riders, many soldiers who were hiding in the caves or preparing to escape suddenly lost most of their terrified expressions on their faces. They picked up their weapons on the ground again, stopped running, and began to look for the flag of the Wolf Riders in the city. If they were not completely desperate, how could they escape? Their families are in Stonehenge. For Stonehenge. For His Majesty Robb. For Stonehenge. For His Majesty Robb. For Stonehenge. For His Majesty Robb. I don't know when this cry started, but soon everyone started to shout it, and it became more and more orderly and louder. Under the banner of the Wolf Riders, more and more Stonehenge defenders gathered. They shouted long live the wall loudly, and their faces were filled with the belief that they would die. The defenders of Stonehenge, after experiencing a rout, actually gathered together again. Such a scene is rare in the history of the entire Westeros continent. Thank you all for your monthly tickets. Chapter 50. A bloody battle between 5 people. The guards of Stonehenge shouted, regained their courage, picked up their weapons, and started fighting with the mountain army that had already rushed into the city. Everyone dismount. Stonehenge was not a very large castle, and its interior was crowded and poorly planned. When Little John and his men rushed in, the Wolf Riders could only line up 4 people together. After finding the people of the Bracken family, the crowded road could only allow 2 Wolf Riders to stand side by side. It was obviously more mobile to dismount and fight at this time. Go, there are not many of them, surround them and kill them. When the Nottapod and Sweetmouth Raff saw the scene of the rekindled sparks in Stonehenge, they were a little frightened at first, but they found that there were not many Wolf Riders. The number of people gave them courage, and they quickly gathered and rushed towards the dismounted Wolf Riders with a large force. Kill. For King's Landing. For the king. The 2 waves of people collided with each other. In this crowded street battle, courage and bravery were the key. 7 or 8 people were crowded in a row, and the sound of steel colliding was endless, and the sound of heavy hammers hitting armor exploded in the eardrums. The long sword pierced through the leather armor with a smooth sound, piercing the flesh and blood, bringing out a large ball of red liquid. The shouts and curses came one after another, blood splattered all over the face, and the white teeth wanted to bite the enemy's flesh. The soldiers in front fought bloody battles, and the soldiers behind held their bodies. When the people in front fell, they rushed up to fight with the new enemies. This was the most cruel flesh saw battle. Even veterans who had been on the battlefield for a long time would regard this kind of battle as a nightmare for their whole life. Kill. Kill these sons of bitches. Kill him all, and then go enjoy the women in the city. For Lannister. The members of the Bracken family saw this scene, and felt strange in their hearts. The battlefield was very delicate now. It seemed that only the men of the mountain and the Stonehenge city guards who had just assembled were relying on roaring to boost morale. The wolf riders wearing the same clothes were all silent, just mechanically repeating the actions of chopping and killing the enemy. They faced the enemy, but their eyes were cold. The enemy could clearly see the expressions on their faces, but they could see nothing, except contempt for life. Devil? Aren't they afraid of death? Why don't they shout? Why do they look at me like a dead person? The weird and fearful atmosphere first appeared at the forefront of the mountain's army. The mountain's men were gradually filled with fear. Their physical fitness was not as good as the wolf cavalry. At this moment, they were hesitant and afraid, and they no longer had the courage to swing their swords. If one wolf cavalry fell, then more than 10 of them must have fallen. What kind of team is this? No wonder Jaime was captured alive by his majesty with 10 times the number of troops. Henry Bracken was amazed. Beth Bracken glanced at him and said, "It's not that his majesty can win the battle with this team, but that this team can be called wolf cavalry, because of his majesty." Beth could see that the spirit of this team was completely different from that of ordinary soldiers. Harry Rivers leaned against the wall. Although he was weak, his tone was full of joy. "We are going to win. The wolf riders are going to kill these little guys." The situation on the battlefield was very clear at this time. The team of 500 wolf riders was almost unscathed, but the mountain's men had lost a small half. This loss ratio almost broke the morale of the mountain's army. If the people behind could not see the battle situation in front, they should have been defeated at this time. Damn rubbish, get out of the way. Just when the people of the Bracken family thought that the battle was about to end and Stonehenge City was defended, a huge voice sounded on the battlefield. A piece of armor that covered the sky and the sun walked into the battlefield. His footsteps were extremely heavy, almost half a meter taller than each soldier. With a flick of his hand, several friendly soldiers were pushed to the back. Those soldiers felt as if they were hit by horses. Before they could react to what happened, their bodies flew directly. "The mountain is coming. Long live. Long live the mountain. Long live the Clegane family." On the battlefield, the troops under the mountain's command suddenly roared with excitement, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. They hurriedly made way for the mountain to stride forward. The mountain had a smooth journey, holding a two-handed giant sword, and in the blink of an eye he arrived at the center of the battlefield. Whether it was the enemy or his own people, the mountain did not even look at them, and the two-handed giant sword swept everything in front of him fiercely. Several wolf riders and soldiers of the Lannister army were directly killed by this sweep. The power of the mountain was fully revealed at this moment. Kill. Long live Clegane. Seeing this scene, the mountain's men not only did not feel cruel, but became more excited. Lord Mountain is definitely someone who can change the battlefield by himself. Ding 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 ding. The wolf riders were not frightened by the mountain's attack just now, and the enemy's shouting. They fearlessly waved their weapons and attacked the mountain. But the mountain was covered in heavy armor, and their weapons could not cause any damage to the mountain at all. Roar. The mountain was enraged by such an attack. He roared and picked up the two-handed giant sword with one hand, slashing at the wolf rider who attacked him. This oppressive sword was so powerful that no human in this world could take it head on. Several wolf riders lost their lives instantly. "Back off. Let us do it." Seeing this, Little John and 4 centurions roared. The 5 of them rushed to the front and surrounded the mountain. Ha! Little John inherited his father's bravery. He held a long halberd and slashed at the mountain. The mountain swung his sword to block. His two-handed giant sword was so heavy that it could be used as a shield. Seeing this, Edric immediately threw away his weapon and, together with Clay 7, each of them hugged one of the mountain's feet. The two of them exerted their strength together, and with Greenbeard swinging his heavy weapon to smash the mountain, the few of them cleverly made the mountain lose balance. Boom. The mountain fell like a mountain. Several centurions immediately rushed over, stretching his legs, pulling his hands, stepping on his abdomen, and using all the means they could. The mountain roared and began to struggle. The soldiers behind him saw that their boss was trapped and they wanted to help, but the wolf riders also came up. Damn it. Is this guy still a human? The 5 centurions were originally very strong, but they were horrified to find that they could not control the mountain. The mountain's arms were under Little Jin, but the heavy armor protected him. Little Jin found that his body was floating up slowly and uncontrollably. The mountain was about to lift him up. Slit the throat. Hurry up. Greenbeard shouted, he's going to throw me out. Daisy Mormont stretched out her palm and tried her best to move the mountain's helmet. The others used all their strength, hoping to suppress the mountain for a while longer. Ding dang. The sound of a dagger hitting iron was heard. Daisy Mormont's face suddenly changed. He's wearing a chainmail underneath. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.